Hello and welcome to another episode of the Uncommon Energy Podcast. On this week's episode, we'll be chatting through the results from the Oceania International Championships, which took place this past weekend. Got a bit to talk about there. We'll, of course, also be talking about the NAIC dates, which were recently confirmed, and what some of the information that has come out could mean. We'll, of course, have Guess That Flavor Text, everyone's favorite segment of the podcast. And then we'll wrap it up by talking about Bochum and Knoxville regionals, which are taking place this weekend. Bochum in Germany and Knoxville in Tennessee in the US of A. My name is Chip Ritchie, and I'm joined here as always by my co-host Azul GG. What's going on, Azul? How was your week, man? You have anything exciting happen?
The week was pretty good. For anyone that doesn't know, I did win OCIC over the weekend, playing Lost Box. So it went about as good as I could have. Of course, could have played a little bit better, made a few less gameplay errors, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. But overall,
Kids cheating.
definitely, definitely a plus overall. And yeah, feeling pretty good after getting the win. So now my second international win, which feels pretty good. And also like a pretty yeah, it always kind of feels like whenever I'm like not making top eights and stuff, regionals and stuff, I always feel like I'm like, am I falling off? Do I need to put in more time and more effort to keep up with everyone else? But then it always feels good to get a win and be reassured that I'm still pretty much towards the top for the most part. Of course, there's always more you can do, but it is nice and reassuring to get a win. Knowing that I'm still up there competing with the best in the game pretty consistently. So that's pretty cool. And then we got Knoxville in Bochum, like you mentioned, coming up this weekend. But actually, I'm actually even headed out already a little bit sooner than that because CGC, for those of you who don't know, I'm on their competitive team. They're a sponsor of mine. So shout out to CGC. They're putting on an invitational tournament that I'm going to be part of. It's going to be me and the rest of the team, Caleb Gettimer, Daniel Altavilla, and Kid Stark. And they'll be going up against some influencers and content creators in the Pokemon space for a little bit of an invitational, kind of more of a fun tournament more than anything, nothing too serious, but it's going to be a good time. If you guys want to catch that action, check out the CGC Grading Twitch channel. It's CGC Grading, twitch.tv/CGC Grading. So I'm going to be doing that. I'll be heading out literally tomorrow morning at like 6 a.m. And that'll be happening on Thursday. So make sure you go ahead and check that out for sure. So, I mean, that was my week. One OCIC. That's my week coming up. We got the CGC Invitational and then at Knoxville Regionals. Chip, how was your week? How did you like? It's your first time in Australia, right? So how'd you like Australia?
Yeah, man, it was my first time in Australia, and it was pretty sweet. I had a great time. I feel like I maybe could have gotten to see a little bit more of the city, or not city, but like of Australia. Like I didn't go. A few of the casters went to like this, like animal reserve type thing and saw like koalas and kangaroos and stuff, and I didn't do that. Kind of wish I had, but excuse me. Overall, yeah, had a good time. It was beautiful. It was a very warm weather, which was nice. The flight and travel there is terrible. It is so
Yeah.
bad, especially from the East Coast. It's like not great for you from the West Coast, but from the East Coast, it's like it just makes it's like already going to be a bad day of travel from the West Coast. But the fact that you have to, before you have the day of travel to Australia from the West Coast, have to have a whole day to travel out to the East, from the East to the West Coast, like just adds, it layers on, makes it even
Yeah, it's a
worse.
little
But
ways.
and especially because my flight out had a 12-hour layover. I don't even remember if I talked about this last week, but it was miserable. It was pretty bad. But I'm home now, which is nice, and turning around and running right back out the door to Knoxville because I'm casting Knoxville this weekend. So I'm excited for that. I'm actually not casting. I'm doing the analyst lounge this weekend.
But I have
Um,
yet. Do they usually interview the winner of the stream in the analyst lounge, or how does that work?
Yes, but the analyst lounge is shared between all 3 games. There's only 1
Oh,
set. So sometimes if one of
I
the
have
other
yet to go back
streams is
there.
already using it, the winner has to get interviewed, like, at the desk or something. So it
Yeah, yeah.
just kinda
Unlucky for me, I
depends.
guess.
Yeah, yeah.
I have
It
yet
just
to be able to go
depends.
back to the analyst lounge, unfortunately. Maybe yeah, because I was on stream 3 times this week, and I won all 3. No, 4 times. 4 times? 3 or 4
Yeah,
times.
well, we did all interviews for the ICs on stage. All
Oh,
the IC
really?
interviews were on stage, yep.
Oh, I guess I'm so lucky. Maybe one day I'll experience. I
So
just want to see where it is and see what the setup looks like in person. That's like, oh, I'm just curious. I'm just curious to see it. That's kind of it. I don't even
it's
want to get
kind of
like
different
interviewed
at
there,
every
but
tournament, but
yeah,
yeah, I don't know. It's just back there, man.
yeah. So
It's
that's what
like
you're
back
doing.
near where we're casting and stuff. But yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm doing the lounge. I'll be doing the player interviews. I'll be doing like the between round segments and stuff where we can, picking up random interviews throughout the day with different people who we haven't had on stream, maybe, picking up some other interesting segments here and there, whatever we can come up with. I've got some ideas brewing that we've been chatting about. So I'm doing that a few more times this season as well. I don't know if I'm like technically supposed to say that or not, but I am. So I'm looking forward to that and trying to like continue to make the um you know lounge
A
change
little
it up
more
a little bit as
content.
we're moving forward. So but yeah. Uh Other than that, though, let's just hop into it and talk about the results from OCIC. And I guess before we do anything that we have listed here in like our little outline as well, why don't you just kind of, I mean, you won the tournament, pretty
Yeah.
sweet. Give us a little rundown of what the process kind of looked like, what your testing looked like, and how you guys ended up on the deck that you ended up on, and maybe just a little bit about like your run, like some of the decks you played against and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, we did quite a bit of testing because we got in. Most of us got in on Monday, before the tournament. We didn't really do too much testing on Monday. The tournament started on. Did we get on Monday? I think we got in on Monday. Yeah, we had to get on Monday. So we got in on Monday.
I think so.
Didn't do too much testing the first day, if I remember correctly. Maybe we did. We did a lot of. We played a lot of games. We were really trying to stress test control, trying to find where we thought its limit was. And we did expect a decent amount of people to play stuff like Birdkeeper or a switch card alongside the Irida, and potentially the Snorlax as well. I think a decent amount. I mean, I played against a couple people with the Snorlax plus a switch card. So I think our prediction was right to not play control because we were finding the matchup to be not favorable overall if they had the switch card plus the Snorlax. Um, so we're really just stress testing control for the most part while trying to come up with other things. And we went through like a couple other ideas with like a Mew build, and a Vikavolt build and stuff like that. And all that while we were still like working on Lugia because that was like always a consideration. So we were working on our Lugia list, and then a Lost Box list as well, just trying to come up with like what we thought would be like the best Lost Box deck to potentially play for the tournament, playing around like specifically the Wash Energy that people would maybe include in their Lugia decks to stop the Raikus and the Kyogres from the Lost Box decks. So if you put the Watch on the Manaphy, Sableye can't KO it, and then you can't take advantage of the big snipe attackers in Raikou and Kyogre. So we ended up with a Lost Box build that was a little bit more straightforward with the prize trade, and then kind of ignored the snipe potential from something like the Raikou and the Kyogre by just not playing them and then being more consistent by just playing more cards that kind of just one hit KO your opponent's active, or in kind of enabling those cards more with like the Zeraora and the Snorlax and the double choice belt again, but no. Like the big missing card from like the list, if you look at it, is the Kyogre for sure. So there's no Kyogre. I think the one card that would have been nice to be honest, like looking back on it, probably would have been a Raikou V. To be honest, you wouldn't have used it every game, and it still would have been tough to like set up and pull out. But I think the option of something like a Raikou V would have been pretty nice to be honest. But yeah, ended up with the Lost Box overall. We played a lot of games, a lot of different decks. The Lost Box was the way to go in the end.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely feels like I mean, I was kind of popping around in and out. I was there a couple of times when you guys were testing, and there was a lot of discussion being had and a lot of strong opinions being, kind of talked through with the group and stuff. But yeah, this list feels very similar to the Kyogre deck that you've been playing most of this format. Obviously, without the Kyogre, and when you're not playing Kyogre, you can go down a recycler. You don't really need the Pokestop anymore. But I
Yep,
mean, other than that, like, I mean, this feels like it's probably 5 cards off of the Arlington list, something like that.
it's pretty close. Yeah.
Yeah, it's got the same supporter count and um yeah, overall very similar to what you guys have been playing, but just kind of removing Kyogre. And it's actually funny because you've talked about removing that Kyogre from the deck for like a while now.
Yeah.
But what made it so that for this event it just, yeah, I guess just Sableye Wash Energy being too big of a worry, and you just thought none of those sniping attackers were worth it?
Yeah, we thought like a decent amount of people would probably bring the Wash Energy in the Lugia deck. I think less played it overall than we thought
Yeah, I think it ended up not being
would.
super popular.
Yeah, not that many people ended up rocking it. overall, which is interesting. But I mean, Kyogre, like the Kyogre, the Lost Box decks in general that actually take advantage of the snipe, try and take advantage of the snipe as much as possible, weren't super popular. So I guess it kind of makes sense
Yeah, the
in
average
that
was
regard.
0.06 wash energy in the day in
so,
the day 2
so was it
Lugia
just
lists.
Grand Shen playing it maybe then?
Maybe. Oh,
Yeah.
wait, this
So
might be no, sorry, this includes all of this entire format, sorry.
okay, yeah, you have to go to
Can I not?
statistics. Oh no, you have to go
That's what I
to
was.
cards. You have to go to cards, not
Oh, yeah, yeah,
statistics.
yeah,
It
yeah, yeah.
was 23%.
Okay.
23% had the watch ID. So that's like a fourth, right? That's like not.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
I think I predicted 30%, which is still a pretty high count for us to like then include Kyogre, maybe the Pokestop over the training court, and the second recycler to really like keep the Kyogre a consistent option. Like that's quite a few cards that aren't just like straightforward consistency. Like instead of those cards, we had stuff like the boss's orders option, which is like really strong, paired with Zeraora up against Lugia, and then also like the training cord, the air balloon, which I think are super high value cards right now in the Lugia matchup because most people only run like Pumpkaboo in a vacuum, right? Is like their outs to removing tools and stadium cards besides attacking with Lugia. But if they're attacking with Lugia, their Lugia is in the active, which you're pretty comfortable with happening. So
Yeah.
you kind of want their Lugia in the active more so than not. So yeah, the air balloon and like training card can be like super high value cards in the Lugia matchup right now because no one's playing Collapse Stadium anymore. And they, like I said, they do have Pumpkaboo, but no one wants to put Pumpkaboo in play against a Sableye deck. So those are pretty high value cards in that matchup for that reason.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, congrats, Azul. It's got to feel good. Obviously, I don't think we want to sit here and talk through your whole tournament run, but
Yeah.
maybe just give us like one or two highlights in day 2, and then would you want to talk about like what happened in your top 8, top 4, and talk through your thoughts on what happened in the finals?
Yeah, I mean, day 2 was pretty smooth, I would say overall. I did lose. I forget what my loss was in day 2. It was probably to a Lugia. I don't remember though. Had to have been to a Lugia, I assume. I hit Lugia. And then I had to have been to a Lugia. I can't imagine I've not been to a
You played
Lugia.
Cameron with the Vikavolt on stream, right?
Yeah. So I beat the two decks that weren't Lugia. I definitely beat. I beat Cameron, and then I beat Mia with Arctura on the winning in. And it was like a pseudo winning in for them because they would get to 31 points. So they weren't. So they asked me to like ID when I sat down. I was like, no, I probably want to play this one out because I was guaranteed top 8 if I win. Whereas if they only get to 31, they could make top 8, but not guaranteed. So yeah, they didn't draw very well. So that one was like the easiest matchup, but they kind of like dead drew 2 games in a row. So I took that one, beat Cameron on stream as well. Yeah, there was three. There were the other matches were 3 Lugias, but I don't remember which Lugia I lost to. I think I took a loss, so if I remember correctly. And then in top 8, I played against Yurko. I think that was maybe the best I played all tournament was that match, that set. Like I was not on stream, which was nice, and I was just kind of locked in. I played a lot more locked in and focused in day 2. Day 1 was like, speaking of like venue and location a little bit, I guess like the venue was bad. It was so small. There was no room. There was four matches to a table. You were shoulder to shoulder to everyone. And I'm someone who like sweats really easily. I definitely think I've noticed that. I think that gets to me and gets to my play a little bit because I kind of had the same problem at LAIC where it's just like I just get super uncomfortable, really hot, not ridiculously sweaty, but enough that it definitely I feel uncomfortable. I need to bring like a dry shirt with me to be honest, or like a towel or something. Like it actually gets like it's pretty uncomfortable. I think it definitely affects my play overall. Um, and maybe it was one of the reasons I didn't even make top 8 at LAIC. Like if I was in like a a more cool environment and I wasn't like so uncomfortable. I think it definitely affects my play. So like in day 2, I was super focused, super locked in, got my caffeine, and everything was like there was like two matches to a table or something, so you had plenty of room, wasn't sweating, wasn't uncomfortable. So I played really well in day 2 overall. I think when I got to top 8 against Yurko, yeah, I think it's probably the best set I played. That's the cleanest I played all tournament was against Yurko. Yurko didn't have a very good game 2. In game 1, I got a turn 1 Zeraora, but like my play was just
Yeah.
felt like super clean in that set, for sure.
Yeah, game 1 was crazy. I was standing there. I wasn't like casting or doing the admin role for top 8, so I was out watching the other top 8 matches play out. So I watched your turn where you popped off with the turn 1, lost Mirage Gate into like KO with the Zeraora, but Yurko had 2 Lugias in play. Why were there 2 Lugias in play? Your deck does not turn 1 attack, and then you could have just won right there. Then it ended up being a longer game, but you still won,
Yeah.
obviously, so it's fine. But I was like, man, he should have just won right there on the spot because your deck never turned one Mirage Gates, but you
It
just like
doesn't do it
happened
very
to get
often.
it right there.
Yeah,
It was pretty
definitely got a
sick.
little bit fortunate. Yeah, and then my top 4 match went up against Owen Cameron, one of the, I mean, the best placing players this year.
He's second in Europe behind Tord, and he actually might have passed Tord now, to be
Yeah.
honest.
So yeah, one of the best placing players this year for sure. Has been a name that I've like looked out for a while, and I think this is going to be like I don't they I mean they did well last season too, but I feel like this is going to be they're going to be like a household name after this season probably for sure. Owen will be. Um, but it was up against Mew, which is a pretty good matchup, and I didn't play. I can remember one mistake I made in game one, where I discarded my boss instead of a cram. I probably should have kept my boss. It was a little risky to not have the boss option later on, depending on like when like psychic leap loops start happening potentially. Neither game got to psychic leap loop because I went with the more aggressive Drapion play in the top 4 matches where as soon as I drew Drapion plus Seal Stone, I was like, well, I may as well just go for it. And I felt like I have like 2 turns to close out the game with other means. I think that's enough time to close out the game. And like specifically in game 2, they were down their Roxanne and their Pal Pad. So I was like, okay, they can't
Right.
Roxanne me again. So I felt pretty safe, especially in game 2. And I felt pretty safe in game 1 as well because I had already set up the Greninja play on the Genesect. So I was like, I have 2 turns to draw Sableye energy.
Yeah.
So uh something else I was going to say about that set as well. But yeah, I went for the earlier Drapion. Oh, yeah, especially like in game 1, I played Colress and I drew Drapion Training Court Sky Seal Stone off the Colress. And I was like, well, I feel like it's a little bit disrespectful to my deck to not use these cards right here. Like they're giving it to me. I literally Colress into 3 of the 3 card combo I need. I think I should just go for it here. I had like three Comfies in play and stuff as well. So I was like, if I whiff for a turn, I can just Comfy 3 times and then I should be able to get it on the next turn if I whiff the Sableye on the next turn. So um yeah, that went pretty smoothly. It was up against Mew. I played one other Mew in the tournament and it was pretty much a steamroll as well. The Mew match was pretty good with the Sky Seal Stone plus Drapion combo. And then the finals was interesting for sure. I didn't play particularly well in the finals, but thankfully neither did Reagan in game 1 specifically with the when I played down 2 escape ropes and Reagan sent back up the damaged Stoutland. Reagan was like pretty confident I had whiffed the Manaphy recovery on my turn because Reagan had just taken out my Manaphy. This was in game 1. But if Reagan had literally sent up any other Pokemon, I think I just lose that game. Maybe if they had sent up Luminion, there was still a chance where like I can go Greninja later on for like 4 prize cards on the Stoutland plus a Luminion with some other like choice belt shenanigans. Like it would
Yeah,
have
but
to be
you
it
would
would
have
be
had to get the
weird.
Stoutland back
Yeah.
active, right?
I'd have to hope that Reagan like attacked with Stoutland
yeah.
that turn, and then I go like Greninja plus choice belt KO the Luminion that cram hit plus KO the active Stoutland, and then goes Aurora boss KO the second Luminion on the bench or something, or I guess it could KO Lugia as well. But I think the matchup is probably overall slightly favored because Reagan did not play Dunsparce. So I think overall was probably slightly favored matchup. And then game 2, uh, Reagan got the lone chops out, which does happen a decent amount of times in the Lugia deck. And I misplayed pretty bad in that game as well. I miscounted Reagan's DTEs, and even then, though, I could have gone for like a more aggressive route like multiple times in the game. I had a really good Sableye play on like turn 2 or 3 where I set up the Archeops, the active Lugia for 6, and the bench Lugia for 3. So that way Dragonite could KO any of the Lugias in play with the Sky Seal Zone to draw 3 prize cards at some point. And then on the next turn, I could have either Zeraora the active or Sableyed the Archeops. And I was like, well, if I don't Sableye the Archeops this turn, they're just going to go ahead and push up Archeops and attack with it. It's like the only play they could make. So I was like, well, maybe I take out the Archeops this turn, cut off any potential for any shenanigans. And then next turn I go into like a Zeraora or potentially a Dragonite plus Seal Stone to close out the game. So I went to Sableye that turn. Could have gone with the Zeraora play instead. I'm not sure it was 100% correct, to be honest. But then the next turn,
Yeah, the annoying thing about KOing the Archeops was that it didn't help your prize trade,
well,
right?
if I get the
Because well,
Seal
it helped you
Stone,
for the Seal
yeah,
Stone specifically, I guess. So maybe
yeah.
that it is worth going for it because that line exists. But if you don't hit that line, then you still have to take 2 knockouts, right?
Yeah, and it was really awkward because specifically that situation was really awkward because I didn't have Guru in play, so it was like really hard for me to like set up plays after that. To be honest, I don't think game 1 or 2 I got Guru into play. I think I lost on it both times, unfortunately. But specifically in game 2, it hurt a ton to not have Guru in play. Like if I had Guru down, I think that game is just a breeze. But because I didn't have Guru down, my Comfies got weirder towards the late game, and then I wasn't able to set up any plays around my energy as well to make my Mirage Gates easier. So like not having Guru in play was like a pretty big deal. But yeah, I played game two pretty poorly, like I said. And then like going to the second to last turn of the game, I had the attack with Aurora to knock out one of the two Lugias in play. But I thought that Reagan still had a double turbo left. And then when I checked their discard pile the next turn, I realized, oh, both are in the discard pile. So if I just knock out this active Lugia, there literally isn't an attacker that exists that I can't KO on the following
Yeah.
turn. So I
Yeah,
should have
you
just
got
attacked
really
a turn
lucky that
earlier.
Reagan missed an energy on that last
Yeah.
turn, because if Reagan had found an energy the second to last turn, because you hadn't attacked, he only had 1 prize left, right? So, like, he had
Yep.
2 prizes left, and then if he attaches attacks, you KO the Lugia, and then you have to just hope he doesn't have a 4th energy for his Lugia, and if he does, he wins the game instantly. So, you
Yep.
got a little lucky there for sure, but, I mean, I think
Definitely.
that's, obviously, like, you played well throughout the entire weekend, and it ends it up still being okay for you, but, it's always a little sketchy, and it proves that, I mean, there's a lot going on in a player's mind up on the stage, especially with Lost Box as well, a deck that you have so many options and so many things you can do every single turn. It's a little bit more going through your mind than when you're playing something like, Marnie, Path to Peak, Flying Pikachu, right?
Yeah, definitely a little bit more to think about. And yeah, it was like a little more pressure. It's a little bit more distracting to play on the stage. And yeah, I definitely didn't play great in the finals, but I definitely gonna make sure I focus up a little bit more next time for sure. Yeah, because it definitely got to me a little bit, but yeah, ended up getting it up in the end. So yeah, it was cool to play against. It's gonna be interesting. Like it's my third time playing against Reagan already this season. We tied at LAIC. I beat him at Orlando and beat Reagan again here. So it's going to be interesting playing against Reagan going forwards for sure. Maybe me and him are going to have a little bit of a rivalry moving forwards. But yeah,
Yeah.
super stoked on the win for sure.
Yeah, and congrats to Reagan for sure as well on the second place finish. I mean, it's his first year as a master. I think everyone
Yep.
knows he's gonna be a great player. And I think that the biggest thing that seniors have lacking coming into the masters division is lack of experience. And Reagan actually has a ton of experience, right? It's
Yeah.
just in the younger division. So he's caught up to things with the masters division. It took him a little while to get going. His start to the season was kind of okay, but he's really like popped off here the last 2 tournaments. So congratulations to Reagan. He definitely deserves it. So,
Yeah,
um,
definitely.
and congratulations to you as well, Azul. You join a list of just a handful of other people. Toward Reklev winning 4 ICs, Stefan and Gustavo both winning 2 ICs, and you now winning 2 ICs. And you're the only person who has won 2 different ICs besides Tord, because Stefan won NAIC twice, Gustavo won EUIC twice. So, yeah, I mean, I
Yep.
don't think anyone would dispute the fact that Tord, Gustavo, and Stefan are 3 of the best players in the game. You join that list, so take with that what you will, I guess.
I will mention one thing I do have over Gustavo and Stefan is I have made the finals 3 times.
Ah, yes,
I
yes.
do have +1 finals on them as of
No,
right now.
Stefan made finals at OCIC. Don't forget
Which one?
the one that Isaiah won.
Oh, okay, okay. I guess I tied Stefan on that one then. All right, all right, all right. All right, Gustavo's got some catching up to do then.
Gustavo is the one that's got. I mean, he won worlds, so he was a junior, but
Everyone
still had his
knows
worlds
seniors
deck
and juniors.
printed. Yeah.
That's true. That's true. That's pretty nice.
All
All
right.
right.
Before we get into the results, though, and general event thoughts, I guess just a little live editing on the fly. Your camera's kind of lagging a little bit, actually, on the OBS Ninja. So I think maybe if you
Interesting.
just open up the window, it might be okay. But the audio is
I
still
ha-
perfectly fine.
I
So,
have it open.
oh, it looks fine right now. So we'll keep our eye on it. I don't know if there's anything we can really do about it. So if you're watching on YouTube and you notice a little skippiness in Azul's face, it looks like it's calmed down for now.
Interesting.
But yeah, general thoughts on the event. We talked about the location. Yeah, I totally agree with Azul that the venue was way too cramped. And I think that's a product of the event sold out really fast, right? And they
Yeah.
wanted to make more spots. The sacrifice to make more spots is that there's less space in the venue. Worthy trade-off. What do you think, Azul?
I mean, I always want as many people as possible, right, to be able to play the game. It was cramped. It was definitely cramped. I guess maybe we have had a little bit of a luxury at the U.S. tournaments. I should be curious to know like what the setup is normally like at the. I've had 2 Australian regionals so far, a couple in Europe, a couple in Latin America. What are the setups like over there? If anyone played at those, let us know in the comment section down below. Are you guys playing shoulder to shoulder? Especially any of you that have like traveled to maybe some of the American regionals, which is a small number. So I don't know if anyone like that is listening to the podcast. But yeah, what are those like? Because in the US, we get they give us a ton of space. Like at post COVID, Like, I remember showing up to the first tournament post-COVID, Salt Lake City, like, we had, like, two games to a table, I think, if I remember correctly. Like, we had space. I think it's come down a little bit since then, but it's still a decent amount of space, which is nice. So, of course, there's the trade-off of, like, getting as many people as possible, you know, the players who do sign up having extra space to work with. So, it is nice to have some space, for sure. It did feel it was just it was cramped for sure. It was kind of, like, uncomfortably cramped. But maybe I mean, I think it used to be that way though, right? Like, I feel like we used to have that, like, people literally shoulder to shoulder at every single regional. So, it'd be nice to have, like, people getting into these tournaments, tournaments not selling out instantly, and also the players who, do end up showing up having a decent amount of space and not feeling super cramped. It would be nice. I don't know. I don't know if that's just an American thing though or not. Like, maybe we're just spoiled.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's definitely tough whenever I mean, you're talking about, like, not being able to focus because of how cramped it is, right? Like, that's, I think, something that is not like, I think that there should be enough space. And also, funny enough, I mean, I don't know if we really want to get into this too much. Someone pointed out that, like, technically having that many seats that close to each other is against Pokemon's COVID protocols. So I don't, I don't know what the situation necessarily is there,
ESL
but
does things different, man. They just do it different. I mean, that's one of those situations where, and I've actually looked like if also like I've done VIP seating in the past at a
hmm
regional, at Santa Clara regional, and actually I'm not gonna lie, VIP seating is super nice. Not having to like leave your table and then having a decent amount more space than the other tables is like super super nice. So um, it's something I've considered like purchasing at some of these regionals, but it's gotten so much more expensive than it was in the past. Like
it's
it's like
like 200 bucks, isn't it?
it's like
Like,
$200. Like, if they just gave me just VIP seating, like, if I could pay for just VIP seating, and I don't know, maybe, like, that's it. That's all I would really need. Like,
yeah, you
if you
don't care
charge
about
me
getting like the
double,
t-shirt and stuff like that.
yeah, if they could just charge me for just VIP seating and not make it like $200, like 150, I would even consider that like 150 to be honest, because it's pretty nice to have that, especially in some of these more bigger, more cramped regionals. Like Knoxville is probably going to be like Orlando was, and even like OCIC was. But there's no way they had any room for VIP seating at OCIC. It was just everyone was cramped in there. Like it didn't matter the game. I think it was pretty cramped for everyone. For sure. But it's definitely something like if TOs are interested in like actually selling more VIP slots. I don't know if they are or not. I don't know if those are already maxing out or not. But like for someone like me, and I'm sure there's other people out there, if you made VIP seating less expensive at the cost of just only making it VIP seating, I would be interested. I'm sure there's other people who'd be interested as well.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the numbers right now for Knoxville, we're at 1,200 masters registered. I think that is it on available seats. I don't think they're releasing any more at this point. I think, did they do a wave this weekend maybe? Um,
And
so I
some of the not all the regionals have. I was just mentioning that as well. Not all the regionals have VIP seating, which is fine. Only some of them. I don't know which ones do, which ones don't though.
yeah, I think
More
day two
organization
events
based.
normally does it. So I
Yeah.
think there should probably have it. But yeah, regardless, I think that, I mean, it's definitely like a luxury thing, and there's always a few people that pay for it, but
Yeah.
I can understand the plus side of having access to it, just getting to chill for a little bit, right? Not having
Yeah.
to worry
Definitely.
between rounds, and
It's definitely
you
nice.
generally do get a little bit more space, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Um.
remember whenever they did like the team stages at that Memphis regionals one year, and
Yeah.
like your whole team got a stage. That was kind of cool.
That was pretty sick as well. That's basically the exact same thing. Yeah. That was also pretty cool. Definitely was. Definitely was a fan when that happened for sure. Um. Yeah. I guess we can move on. Talk a little bit more about the event. I guess the first thing we can go over is the meta share for the event for day one and day two. So nothing super surprising, right? Lugia about 30%, Lost Box about 20%. Mew did see a little bit of a spike. Like my guess would have been around 12. It was up towards 16%. Reggie's 5. The other 5, which is just weirdly placed. I think that was like a mistake, right? And then Arctur at 5% as well.
Yeah, so looking at the graph here that I have pulled up, it does say other on here twice technically. And this, yeah, it is a little bit of a like graphical mistake backstage. So pretty much the way it works, this little insight for anyone, we get the data backstage from Arcanine, the meta share of, what percentage, how many people are playing each deck. They plug it into this graphic, they make the graphic, and boom, it gets populated. On the data from Arcanine, there's more than just 6 decks, right? But the graph only has space for 6 decks. So, the Arcanine lists like 20 decks, something like that. Like it'll list like, other Arceus variants, it'll list Palkia, like all these decks that are low percentage played, and they always just get grouped in with other, this small other that's up in the top right corner of the graph. But there is also, like, in addition to all that stuff that's outside the top 6, there is another other category, which would just be people who are playing random stuff like Zeraora V Star or Deoxys V Max, like just people who are showing up playing their whatever decks, people who are just having a good time with whatever they've been cooking up with. And that usually just goes into an other category when they really don't have anywhere to place it. Then usually that other category is in the top 6 decks. So what we do generally is pull that down into the bottom part of the graph so that it gets grouped in with the other, and then we would bump up the thing that's in 7th place because, other is on the list, and put it in the 6th place on the graph. So that's what should have happened here, what didn't happen, and that's why it's
It
a
probably
little
would have
messed up.
been.
And we
It probably
did
would have been
fix it.
like
I think it was I
Gudra,
think
right?
I think it was Gudra, yes, I think it
Yeah,
was Gudra, and it was at, like, 4.5
3%.
or something like
Yeah.
that,
Okay.
yeah. 'Cause I noticed this whenever it went live on the stream, and went backstage, and I was like, "Hey, we should fix this," and we fixed it, and I don't know that the graphic got showed again, but they did fix it for day 2, though, day 2, I don't think there's generally many other decks. It's
Also, another
a little
thing they
more
need to fix is
whittled
that
down.
19.8% using other decks text is off to the left, bro. They gotta fix that. That's tilting me. It needs to be a little bit to the right, just a little bit, a little
Yeah,
bit.
sometimes it just happens, I don't know, man, I don't know.
Yeah. But day 2, was really just like, it was actually interesting. Like we saw the top 2 decks kind of maintain. Well, hold up. Lugia got a big bump, right? Lugia was almost 50% of day 2.
Yeah.
Lost Box kind of maintained. Mew fell off, which isn't a big surprise because Lost Box is so popular. And generally, Lost Box is matching up pretty well into Mew VMAX, especially when people are switching over to kind of like Drapion and Sky Sealstone. Going to give you a little bit of edge in that matchup. A little bit of an uptick in Regis. Nothing really to write home about. And of course, we're getting down to pretty low deck counts as well here. So it's only like 4 Regis, right? It's the 7%. Like
Yeah.
Vika Vault was at 5%, but it's like 3 decks, right? It's like not really, can't really draw too much from that. If this was like 5% at Orlando regionals, that'd be different. But 5% in a day 2 this small, it's like, anything could be here. And then Guja closing it out with 2 decks at the 3%. So really just like the what, rich getting richer or whatever. Lugia just bumping up from 28% to 40, almost 50% of day 2 is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, it's almost similar to what we saw at LAIC, to be honest.
Yeah.
There's like at LAIC, it was day 1, 50%, day 2, or sorry, day 1, 25%, day 2, it was like 50%. So, yeah, I mean, that maybe is a little bit of a sign. Like, we get to these international championships, people take it more seriously, right? There's more on the line. In addition to prizing, there's like the, stipends to future tournaments and stuff. And if you're someone who's trying to just lock up $1,000 stipend to EUIC, Lugia is probably a pretty good pick for that, right? Like you're probably going to get top 128, lock up 130 points, and that's probably going to keep you in contention for your region stipend, right?
Yeah, I feel like that is like a way a lot of players, at least especially a lot of like decent players who are like competing for those segments, think about it's like, all right, if I want to get just points, Lugia seems like a pretty good bet, right? It's a way a lot of the players who are contending for those stipends and stuff do view it. It's just like if you're um towards that top end, just playing Lugia, getting your top, 64 top 128 points is like a lot of points, especially if there's not that many players from your region there. So that'll like get you there. And then Lugia is like pretty safe bet for that most of the time just to kind of get points. So kind of makes sense, I guess, overall. Um, yeah, besides that, nothing too shocking, right? Like overall in the meta share. I mean, no, I guess the Arctura going from Arctura kind of not showing up at all in day 2. I guess there was only one
Yeah,
Arctura in day 2. I guess there could have still been 2.
there was
Um,
one.
it was just one. Okay, yeah, the one I played against on the winning end.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
And some of the data as well is a little uh I get it's all right on Limitless now because it's all been released correctly. But like on PokeStats between day 1 and day 2, some of the stuff was not right. Like they had someone in day 2 playing Flaffy Box. There was no one in day 2 playing Flaffy Box. Like I think that guy was playing Lost Box that they put playing Flaffy Box. So stuff just, gets a little lost in translation sometimes, but it should all be
yeah.
correct now on Limitless because it's all data based on um the Arcanine stuff that got released. So yeah, 60 players in day 2. Smaller day 2 from what we've seen, but I mean, it's what we expected, right? It's a smaller IC. Um, but I don't know. I mean, I guess I'd be curious on your thoughts on this as well. I was saying all weekend that I actually think LAIC is the hardest of the internationals. Even though it is smaller, there's one less round. The concentration of the top level is much greater, it feels like to me. Because obviously you've got the Australian players. There's, a handful of really good Australian players, and then the local Australian player base is on par with the local player base in most other regions, right? And then, but you look at like the people who are traveling from their other regions to these internationals, like the top 22 or top 16 from Europe, top 8 from OCIC, top 16 from OCIC, whatever, like, and top 16 from America. All these people travel to LAIC, right? And then, of course, you have the LAIC players, but there's way more LAIC players. So it's like a way bigger pool of like the average player. But at OCIC, you still have all those same players, the top level players traveling from all the regions, but there's just a smaller player base. So you get a more concentrated feel of like the top level. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? And also OCIC as well, we get the Japanese players, which don't really show up at any of the other
Yeah.
ICs.
Yeah, almost like none. Sometimes I think a couple of them come to
Yeah.
NAIC, but,
And sometimes,
yeah, I
well,
think
sometimes EUIC, like Reiji Nishiguchi got top 16,
yeah.
I think, at EUIC this last
Mhm.
year. Yeah.
I think it's I don't know, they're all just hard for different reasons, I think. Like, OCIC is hard 'cause I feel like there's the especially at this one because there was so many Japanese players. So the most Japanese players I think that have ever been to an IC ever. Yeah, like Shintaro, Daichi, Ryota. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Ryota was there as well. First and second from Worlds, and then Shintaro, one of the best performing Worlds players of all time, were at this tournament. So, like I think they're just harder in different ways. I think I would actually maybe rank them as like if I had to like rank them, it would be like the hardest ones are probably NAIC based on the massive number of players, and the second one would probably be OCIC based on the OCIC or EUIC based on how much talent is going to be there versus how many players are going to be there. And I think I put LAIC maybe as the last one, but they're all really close, right? I think I'd maybe put NAIC and OCIC as the two harder ones to win because it's just but massive amount of players for NAIC. And it seems like this year, and we'll get talk about it a little bit later, based on what the venue looks like, we might be able to break that 2K players for Masters TCG. And OCIC, I feel like just because like we just look at this one specifically, the past OCICs, maybe you can make a different argument, but I don't know if there's like a reason to argue about any of them overall. But yeah, the talent concentration at OCIC this year because of how many Japanese players were there, I think it was yeah, that makes it like even though it was a smaller tournament, every single round you're going up potentially up against, like a tier 1 player. So,
Yeah.
whereas like
Yeah. I mean,
OCIC, UIC, and I feel like LAIC kind of fall a little bit outside of their bigger tournaments, but the talent concentration isn't quite as high as OCIC. It's
yeah.
close.
Yeah. And then, I mean, we see with the top 8, I mean, all 8 players in top 8 are, known named players, people who've done well at, this size tournament before. Reagan is kind of the one outlier there, but, it's just because he's a first year master, right? This is his
Yeah.
first IC top 8 as a master. But if you look at his junior and seniors accomplishments, he's won ICs. So,
Yeah, and of course works with, Bradner and crew. So it's kind of expected like Reagan getting up and just
yes,
top 8 at Orlando. Like it's not a surprise that Reagan is top 80
exactly.
in major tournaments and plans to top 8 major tournaments. Yeah, everyone outside of that is a name that basically everyone or most people know. I'd say like maybe the least known name in the top 8 is actually probably Grant Shen. But I feel like everyone knows Reagan because Reagan associates, with the whole Bradner crew. But yeah, I'd say Grant Shen. But Grant Shen's a great player. Just got top 8 at San Diego Regionals not that long ago. And definitely one of the better overall, like definitely a tier 1 player coming from North America. So, yeah, pretty much all the top 8 was pretty well known. And then even you dip down to ninth, and you just have Sam Chen missing out just barely at ninth place. So, and everyone knows who Sam is. So, or most people do. I guess maybe Sam is a little bit more of an old school name these days, but yeah, most people know who Sam Chen is. So, yeah, pretty notable top 8 for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely a really good group of players. And speaking of, let's look at the top 8 decks as well. And we can talk about, I guess, what some of our predictions were. So going into the event, we predicted Lugia, the over under. We put it at 3.5, which I think was a pretty good place to put it. We both took the under, though, and the answer was over. There were 4 Lugia Archeops in top 8, but only
Makes
one made
sense.
it all the way to top 4, and of course Reagan making it to the finals eventually.
Yeah, which makes sense. 50% of the room was Lugia. 50% of day 2 was Lugia.
It
50% of
tracks,
top 8 was
yeah.
Lugia. Yeah. So I think we're both. I was sitting around like I think it would probably be 3, so it was 4 this time. But yeah, like I said, even then, like Grant Shen and Sam were both at 31 points. I think Aiden, and David maybe also at 31 points. I don't know how far down the 31 points went, but that last Lugia, Grant Shen getting as the last Lugia into top 8 was on the edge of not making. So we almost got our prediction right on that one.
Yeah, I think Pedro was also at 31 points. It was a pretty good sized bubble, to be
Yeah.
honest. So yeah, I mean, if we look at the top 16, you're adding in, what, 1, 2, 3, 4 more Lugias into the top 16. So 8 out of 16,
Yeah.
50%,
Still
right?
50%. It's holding
Yep,
on.
it's holding
Now I kind
on.
of want to count 32 to be honest. Like how far does this 50%
Chill, chill.
go?
Yeah, if you go all the way down to 60, it'll be 28, so, or 29, whatever.
Our next prediction that we had was would Sander make top 8? And I actually played against Sander in round 5. And I did end up beating Sander. And my prediction was yes. I thought Sander would make top 8. Had a ridiculously interesting deck. It was like a draw or Curlia draw engine. It was almost like a Pidgeylock deck where you like got Wheezing into the active, and then the deck was kind of insane. You got like Wheezing into the active at some point, and then with cross switchers, and you rock sand them, and then you played the Orbeetle that's effectively Chip Ice Axe, but it's actually better. Well, I guess it could be better, it could be worse, but you get to order the top 3 cards as opposed to maybe it is worse because Chip Ice Axe lets you pick one and
I
shuffle
think
the
it
rest.
is, yeah.
So I guess it depends on the situation. I guess Chip was probably better,
I
to
mean,
be
it's
honest.
obviously worse because it's like a stage 2 versus an item
Yeah,
card,
also that.
but I know I know what you mean though, like as far as just like what the actual effect of it
Yeah,
does.
the
I think
actual
it
effect.
it is better for Chip that like you get to randomize the other cards so that
Yeah.
because like if you bugs radar and you see 2 good cards and you're like, okay, I gotta leave one in this third one, and I hope that third card every single time for the rest of the game is a bad card that I want to give
Yeah, that's
them.
true.
So I think
Yeah.
that makes it a little bit worse. But yeah, definitely it was a really interesting one. Yes, we had the prediction of would Sander make top 8. Azul said yes. Chip said no. I didn't like saying no. I even said like I was only saying no because of
You wanted to pick a
um
different answer.
yeah, I didn't want us to be like overlapping or whatever. But yeah, I mean this one was definitely interesting. And he even said in his tweet that he he like tweeted about it and was like, yeah, I kind of played something wacky for this one. He was one of the first whenever we got access to deck lists. His was one of the first deck lists that I looked at, and I immediately messaged our production team and I was like, "Hey, we need to get the assets for Orbeetle from Sword and Shield base set so we can have it to put up on the screen." But yeah, it ended up not working out the best for him, but definitely, you love to see that he's willing to innovate and try something different, right? And he also
Yeah.
had the Radiant Jirachi in there, which is kind of poggers.
Oh yeah, and that's right. Yeah, there was a whole lot going on. Definitely interesting deck. Yeah, I don't think it was quite up to par as powerful as some of Sander's other decks, but it was so cool to see Sander keep innovating, bringing some new stuff for sure. Our next prediction that we had was non-Lugia deck to win. Chip picked Vikavolt. I picked Arcdura. I think Chip was a little bit closer
I
on
mean,
this one.
listen, Vikavolt won in seniors. So, I mean,
If seniors accomplishments count, Chip, you would have got one.
are you
But
saying seniors' accomplishments don't count,
no,
Azul? Are
they
you
do.
saying
They
that
do
these kids'
count.
accomplishments are meaningless?
No, they
Didn't
do
your
count.
student win in juniors?
Yes, but yeah, seniors and juniors, they're just building blocks to getting better to get once you get to masters. That's what it is.
Okay,
You're
sure.
preparing for the real deal. That's what you're doing. You're preparing for the real deal. I mean, get your wins while you can while you're down there for sure. But yeah, preparing for the real deal, which is the masters division. But yeah, neither of us walking away with a correct prediction there. Although I think you were closer for sure. Well, I guess theoretically, yeah. If I had lost to Cameron, I think Cameron's in a pretty good spot to actually make top
And
8.
you
So
also beat Mia on the winning end. So if you'd lost to Mia, Mia's right
yeah.
in there, right?
Well, Arctur, yeah, Mia would have been at 31 points, so on the bubble.
Yeah.
And I have no idea what Mia's resistance was like, so it's possible. And then we both predicted Sky Sealstone to be the highest placing Crown Zenith card, and I did win with Sky Sealstone. And Pedro was up there with the Zamazenta as well, though. So the Zamazenta was there. No Radiant Eternatus to be seen yet. I would have thought, how many tournaments deep into Crown Zenith? 2, 3?
2.
I would have thought that we would have seen a Radiant E-turn deck in day 2 by now.
It's just not good
Are they
right
that
now, man.
bad?
It's
Is
just
it
not
that
good.
bad?
Really,
Kind of
really strong
unfortunate.
card. The time just isn't right. I think post rotation,
Have a moment.
he'll have a moment. Yeah, yeah. Maybe not
Hopefully.
immediately as well. Like, I don't know. It's just one of those
Yeesh.
cards. Like the effect is so good.
It is so whenever you use it, you just feel like you just did so much for nothing, which is good. But yeah,
Right.
it is rough.
And
It's
maybe it is
unfortunate
in part due to how strong
how strong
the
Lugia
other
is.
radiant Pokemon are in the format,
Oh,
right?
true.
Like you have to, because you can only play one radiant Pokemon, right? So it's like
And not
you
playing
have
Greninja
to
is
be
kind of an
willing to
L.
give up Greninja. You have to be willing to give up Charizard. Like those two cards are so powerful on their own. Like that feels like those are the two that most decks are playing. And then it's like, okay, maybe sometimes we're looking at Radiant Jirachi even these days, but um yeah, you have to be willing. Like, I think the decks that would utilize Radiant E-turn usually are going to be like the Lost Box decks, and the Lost Box decks really like having Greninja for that boost of consistency.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It would be actually cool. Mew's never ran a Radiant Pokemon, right? I mean, there's never been a reason to,
Mew
right?
Radiant E-turn.
No, I was thinking Mew Radiant. I was like, put a Radiant Char. See, but putting a Radiant Charizard on Mew doesn't seem ridiculous.
Bro,
Like one,
where you're putting fire energy in your Mew deck? Are you
one,
serious?
one basic fire, one Radiant
This kid's
Charizard.
trolling
It would have
us.
to help your you probably want to play it in like Fusion Mew, so you could go like Meloetta, Mew VMAX. No, it's just that I guess it never lines up really well. Yeah, never mind.
You've cooked too much.
And then the last prediction we had was what region would win the tournament. I picked Japan, and Japan had a really good showing. I feel like there was none in the top 8, but I don't know how many players from Japan showed up. I think it was at least like 16, is what I heard someone say. But they had quite a few in day 2, quite a few in like the top 32, even the higher half of day 2. Chip picked Australia, and I'm not trying to throw any shade out here, but Australia, what was going on? 0 Australians in top 8, and only 1 in the top 16. Like
Yep.
they were sleeping on this. They were sleeping this IC for sure.
Yeah, we
How
have
many of them
4
played
total
Lugia?
in the top 32 there, and then 33rd and 34th were both Australian players as well. So, like, I mean, they were still
And
hanging
some of them had to
around,
be
but
Australian.
yeah, there's yeah, it definitely was not the strongest showing from the Australian group. And I think like one of the more surprising things is like the Australian players that you expect to see in day
Yeah,
2, Henry Brand, Natalie Miller,
Brent.
Brent Tonneson, right? Like none of these players made day 2, right? The probably
Yeah.
the like most well-known Australian in day 2 was probably Christian, right? Made it in with the
Yeah.
Vikavolt, Matthew
I mean,
Burris as
you had
well.
Jack Underwood. Yeah,
Jack
that's a
Underwood,
name I
yeah.
think. And they
Yep, yep.
made top 8 at the last Australian um tournament as well with the I think they did. I might be trolling on that actually, to be
They
honest.
got ninth at Melbourne with the Frostmoth deck.
And ninth at Melbourne with the Frostmoth. Like, okay, okay.
That was back in June though, so that's been a minute.
Okay, yeah, that has been. I thought they made top 8 at Brisbane. I guess I am trolling. Yeah, I must just be trolling. Yeah, I mean, it looks like Kaiwin retires, and all of a sudden, all of Australia just like
Jeez.
fall. They're just all this because of collapse.
Whoa.
Just jokes, just jokes. Very good players in Australia, of
No, I
course. It's
mean,
just
listen, it's
jokes.
like part of tournaments though. It happens, right? Like
Yeah,
sometimes you just miss day 2. But I mean, I think it's also partially like maybe the deck decision to play Lugia, right? Do you think that has an impact? Like
I mean,
Henry, Natalie, Brent all play Lugia. Like,
I'm very surprised none of them. Of course, like those are like the 3 most notable names I would say for sure from Australia. I'm very surprised none of them made day 2. My prediction would have been all of them in day 2.
right.
Lugia might be an impact on that, but I guess what I've said with Lugia so far is if you're a 0.01% player, which they all are, then I think Lugia is like a reasonable play. But that's like the only people I think Lugia is like a reasonable play for. But I mean, yeah, but like at the end of the day, right, with that as well, right? Like you're just another Lugia deck, going up against a bunch of players who, even if you're the better player, everyone's most practiced against Lugia. You're choosing to play Lugia. So your advantage as being a better player definitely diminishes the more you continue to play like the top deck as a format continues, right? Because everyone's going to be more and more versed in the mirror match or with their deck up against Lugia, or you're gonna have to play against people coming up with like those little cute new ways to try and beat Lugia with their deck because Lugia is the most popular deck, the most played against deck, and the deck that still has the biggest target on its back for sure. So I think there is diminishing returns from playing Lugia for pretty much everyone. I kind of like my mindset around that. I don't think it has changed too much. It just kind of still doesn't make sense to me to play Lugia overall. But yeah, it was definitely a surprise. None of them in day two, specifically of those names. We got Australia in general struggling in day two as well. But I'm sure they'll bounce back. They always do.
So the next thing we wanted to talk about in regards to the happenings at OCIC was there. It was kind of a little bit of a point of discussion after the weekend was all said and done, and really just during the weekend as well. Was there was multiple times where there were multi prize penalties given on stream, and sometimes I think it's like valid, right? Like for
Yeah.
example, you had an instance in your streamed game on day one where you attached a second energy for turn, and it didn't get caught until like an action went by.
Yeah.
We noticed it backstage right away. I was on the admin desk. I noticed it right away. Immediately sent a message to the judge, but you were just cruising and had already looked at your flower selecting and put a card into the lost zone. So
Yeah, you
the
guys need like
judge,
a you guys need like a button in the back, like a red button. When you press it, like a light goes off, like a siren goes off on the main stage, and a red light's blaring. Woo! Stop play! Stop
stop
play!
play.
No, but
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, you
I'm
guys having a button in the back wouldn't be bad to me. Honestly, like that, like lights up a red light on the stage, like signaling to stop play. Actually, that's like a pretty good
I
idea.
just
I feel like
remember
that was a thing.
I remember, yeah, well, I remember a grassroots stream I was watching one time forever ago. I don't, this was have been in back in like 2016 or something like that, where the casters they did something like that, and I think we did that at the critical hit streams for a while, where we
Yeah,
had
I
like
think
a
so.
button that we would push. It's never been done on an official stream before, but I remember watching a stream where the casters had a button they could push that would light up, and the judge would like stop play. And I just remember a gameplay error happening and the caster's going like, "Wait, I think that that's wrong. Wait, oh, should we push the button? I don't know. Should we? I don't know. Should we push it? Can we push it? Is it time to push the button? Should we push the button? I don't know. Should we push the button?" And they talked about maybe
Push the
pushing the button
button.
for like 2 minutes and didn't push the button. Gameplay error does not get stopped, does not get caught. Things kept going on. I don't know. That's just funny. I
But yeah, I
think
got the
obviously if we had access, like I wouldn't have a problem pushing the button if I thought something happened, but yeah, Azul accidentally attached a second energy. I mean, Azul, say your piece now. I mean, everyone
yeah. I mean,
knows
I
you're a
think
filthy cheater, right? Like,
yeah, back saying, and like the ruling was justified. Like, I didn't even like argue it at all. I was like, all right, okay, how do we fix it from here? Thankfully, it wasn't like a broken board state where it couldn't be fixed, and it was a game loss. It was just a prize penalty, and I actually won that game as well. Because my opponent had a pretty bad setup with Lugia, like one Archeops, and then their only efficient, like the thing that happens in that matchup is like if you only set up one Archeops, your most efficient attacker for the rest of the game becomes Charizard. This actually happened against Reagan as well, where in this game my opponent opened the Charizard and I like KO'd it with Greninja pretty fast. Against Reagan, Reagan discarded Charizard in the game where they only able to get one Archeops. So when you lose the Charizard and you're only able to get one Archeops, as soon as you eliminate the Archeops and then the next attacker, they can't ever set up another attacker again, which I was able to do in this game despite having the prize penalty against me. I was able to get the dub. But yeah, I attached early on at the beginning of my turn. Went through quite a few actions. Of course, no excuse. Like I even tweeted out after the tournament that even though I played poorly in the finals, the biggest thing I was disappointed in myself was the amount of gameplay errors I made on stream. So that's like my number one focus going forward, just to hopefully prevent that happening anymore for myself in the future. But yeah, I attached second energy. The judge was like, "Oh, you attached second energy. You've made an action." I was like, "Yep, give me the two price penalty. It's fine." Like I knew it was coming. I wasn't going to argue it. I wasn't going to appeal to the head judge. Like I made a mistake. Take my penalty and kind of move on. And yeah, that was kind of the outcome of that one. One prize penalty that happened in another game of my, but wasn't on me, was when I went up against Cameron Shinoy on round 13, I believe, round before the winning in, and they were playing the Vika Vault deck. And they were forced, like I was forced actually in this game as well, where I got my prize penalty up against a Lugia player. I was forced to play left-handed, which apparently they weren't forcing everyone to do. And I made sure when I got on stage for top four, I was like, I'm not going to play left-handed. And Chris Shemansky, who was the judge for that one, was like, "Yep, you're fine. Don't worry about it. You don't have to play left-handed." And they weren't forcing everyone to play left-handed either. But when Shinoy got on, like when they forced me to play, they told me I had to play left-handed when I got on stage for that round. And then when I got on round in day two up against Shinoy, they told Shinoy that he also had to play left-handed. And what happened to him was when he went to draw his first prize card for the game in game one, instead of drawing a prize card, he drew a card from his deck because his prize cards are normally where his deck would be. So he just went to draw a card. And I actually argued against him getting a prize penalty there. I don't think he should have because he was put in a scenario where, just based on habit, he's going to go to draw a card from that side of the table. It's very evident that it was a habit based mistake and he wasn't trying to cheat or anything. But despite, me saying I don't think he should get a penalty, Shinoy arguing, you're making me play left-handed, whatever. This feels unreasonable to get a penalty. They still gave him a penalty anyway, which I still think is unreasonable, like looking back on it. And I think there are but yeah, looking back on it, I still think it's like unreasonable that he got a prize penalty. And then in game two, he did the same thing again, unfortunately, where he went to go draw a prize card. And it was funny because like he drew a prize card correctly in game two initially.
Yeah.
And then when he went to go get his next prize card, he drew it out of order. I think game two, I was going to beat him no matter what. Game one was definitely a little bit more up in the air, but I was still in a pretty good spot, even with the prize penalty. But yeah, that felt wrong for this. I think like based on the situation, it did not feel like a correct ruling, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think there was some sort of miscommunication along the way somewhere. Players should not be forced to play left-handed.
Or
At
right-handed
the
if they're left-handed.
Yeah, yeah, they should be able to play on whichever orientation they prefer. The reason that for anyone who's unaware of like kind of how the stream game table is set up is, we have the prize cam where there's like a whole camera under the table that through a window can capture the player's prizes. And just with the way the table's set up, both of those are on the same side of the table. So if you're sitting on the right side of the table, it's on your right hand side, and if you're sitting on the left side of the table, it's on your left hand side. So traditionally, if you're a right-handed player, you normally put your prize on the left hand side, and usually on a Pokemon board, you're supposed to keep your prizes and your deck and your discard pile on opposite sides of the table. Like I'm pretty sure that is written in the rule book, but
Yeah.
usually for the stream, they kind of like allow you to still keep your deck and discard pile on the same side. And I think maybe the issue could have come in somewhere where like I don't know if it felt like this to you, but I feel like this stream table was like a little bit smaller than the stream tables we have for the NA regionals.
They're different.
Um,
They're definitely different stream tables. One of the stream tables, I don't know if it's for EUIC or I think it's NAIC, is built for both people to play right-handed. Not like the prize card cam is on the opposite side,
yeah,
but where you put your deck, like the marker to put your deck, is as if you were playing right-handed on both sides.
yeah. I mean, the
So
marker
the
to
stream
put the
tables are
deck is
different.
just
That's for
like
sure.
tape that they put on like
Yeah.
the morning of, so that can like always be adjusted. But
Or whatever. Yeah.
pretty much is just a miscommunication. Players should not have been forced to play left-handed if they were right-handed, from my understanding at least.
Well, yeah, but like, I was allowed to play right-handed. Uh, well, have my deck right-handed in top four, and specifically players who I know were as well as Sam Chen and Natalie, which were both games before mine and Shinoy's, I think, or Sam was maybe after. No, I think it was before mine and Shinoy's. They were both allowed to
Sam was
play.
after you.
Okay, they were both allowed to play with their deck on right-handed as well. So like it was just depending on the judge who was at the table or what they were being told by production. So I don't know if there was different production people, but that doesn't make any sense to me either. But sometimes they were allowed, sometimes they weren't, which is weird. But I think if I had appealed in my game or Shinoy had appealed in that game as well, I think we in those both our situations we would have been able to play right-handed if we had appealed to the head judge, which is I guess is what we should have done to be honest there. So if you ever get on stream and they're forcing you to play left-handed, definitely appeal to the head judge, I guess, is like kind of one of the things to take away from this for sure. Because there's definitely some miscommunication that happened at this tournament, definitely that had us some people being allowed to initially and some people not.
Yeah, so I mean that was a penalty where it felt a little silly that a player was getting a penalty in that spot. And then there was another similar situation when it came to the stream where in top four, Rahul got a two prize penalty because Reagan mulliganed. And Rahul, if you don't know how the sequencing is supposed to work, you draw your 7 card opening hand, you wait to see if you have a basic, you see if your opponent has a basic, right? You put your basic down before you see your opponent's mulligan. They show you they don't have a basic, and then you are supposed to set out your prize cards, and then you draw your mulligan. What happened in this game is Rahul sees Reagan doesn't have a basic, whatever. He sets out his Pokemon, sees Reagan's mulligan. Reagan shuffles, finds a Pokemon, and they're waiting to play, waiting for the stream to get caught up, waiting for the casters to do the intro to the round and all that stuff. And then Rahul's like, "Oh yeah, I have a mulligan," and goes to draw his mulligan, but he hasn't set out his prize cards yet because they don't let the player set out their prize cards until the stream is like ready so that we can do the whole little prize cam thing and stuff like that. Um, so, and then that gives Rahul a 2 prize card penalty. To me, it's still Rahul sets out 6 prize cards and 1 card from his deck becomes a mulligan, right? And they should theoretically be a random 53 cards because he's got 7 cards in his hand, he's 53 cards left in his deck. They should be completely random. So it shouldn't matter as long as his deck is randomized, which it is. It shouldn't matter which one he draws and which 6 go out. But the way the rules are
Yeah.
written, he is meant to set out his 6 prize cards and then take a mulligan. He did not do that, was given a 2 prize penalty for it, which swings the matchup massively, I would say. Um,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, swings any matchup a lot. 2 prize
yeah,
penalty is kind of
of
insane.
course, of course. And so like, and especially when you can, so like, there's two things to think about here. You consider the stakes on both sides of the coin, right? The high stakes, you hate for a game to be decided on something like that. But also with the high stakes, the rules have to be upheld to the highest level. It feels like at the same time, right? So I can understand both reasons. As far as I understand, Rahul appealed to the head judge. The ruling was left as it was because it's just the rules. It's the highest stakes, right? It is what it is. It's really unfortunate for Rahul. Um, but this whole discussion came up online afterwards. I'll pull up this tweet where people were saying like, I think there should be a precedent for penalty de escalation due to reasonable suspicion of stream influence. It's blatantly obvious that Rahul drawing his mulligan first was an accident caused by being forced to wait longer to put out prize cards for the stream. And I think that's totally what happened to Rahul
Yeah.
here, right? And I
And I'll
think this would be very reasonable for this to be something in the rules or something like that.
yeah, and to talk to that because I've been on stream a lot, I've almost drawn my mulligan before my prize cards multiple times on stream. I've caught myself or been caught by my opponent or the judge, and I've also caught my opponent almost drawing on stream, almost drawing their mulligan before their prize cards. Because once again, it's the same thing as like Shinoi's prize card penalty. It's just habit, right? Shinoi didn't want to draw a card from their deck. They want to draw a prize card, but their prize cards are usually on their left hand side, so that's where they would go to get their prize card from. But the prize cards are on the right, so they went to draw from the deck instead. With Rahul, it's like, yeah, usually you have a basic, you set out your prize cards, you go to get your mulligans. So that kind of that pause that they do on stream every time, where they make you set up and then not lay out your, which I don't understand why they stop us from laying out our prize cards. To be honest, I don't understand. Like, you don't need to see us lay them out through the prize cams. Like, they should just let us lay out our prize cards, and then you just switch over to the prize cam and look at them. You don't need to see me put out my prize cards one by one, because this is definitely a situation like like I said, I've almost drawn my mulligan before laying out my prize cards. I've had opponents on stream. I've been stopped. I've caught myself. I've stopped my opponent. Through all the times that I've been on stream, on the official streams so far, like, it's happened. It's come up multiple times. And it seems, I mean, it happened to Rahul. And once again, this doesn't seem like a situation. And in my head, we talked about this a little bit before we started recording, was like, yeah, it does seem like if the deck is truly random, where if Rahul draws the first card as the mulligan or the seventh card as the mulligan, even though you would take 6 cards out of the deck and those decks could no longer be the mulligan card drawn, if the deck is truly random, it shouldn't matter, right?
There's
So
still
if
6
someone,
random cards.
yeah,
Yeah.
if someone in the comment section, or someone who's like wants to leave a comment on if we're wrong on that for whatever reason and explain that, because to me it seems like if the next 7 cards are random, it doesn't matter which one goes to Rahul's hand and which 6 go to the prize cards. It seems like it shouldn't matter. Obviously, there could be a situation where, like, if Rahul knew what the next card was, Rahul would want that card to be drawn as a card to the hand and set it to the prize cards. But if Rahul is deck checked and they don't think Rahul is cheating, then it should be like a warning. And then if it happens again, that's when it should be escalated to a prize penalty, I feel like, for sure. Because this is, once again, it's just a habit thing. Rahul drew the cards for hand for turn, laid out the active Pokemon, and then, there's that pause in time where they wait to tell you to lay out your prize cards, and then Rahul's like, oh, I need to draw my mulligan. Let me go draw my mulligan, forgetting that they hadn't put out their prize cards yet, and that they shouldn't draw the mulligan until after the prize cards have been laid out. So it's literally just a habit thing, and it definitely feels like this should not have been a prize penalty as well. And I think something that just has to stop is they have to stop forcing players who are on stream to wait to lay out their prize cards. Like, no one cares if you see the cards that are prize, or if you see the players laying out the cards that are prize. Like, no one cares. It does not going to enhance the viewer experience. All it does is create issues for potential gameplay errors like this one that Rahul had, that are just super unjust to have a 2 prize penalty for. Unless there was like a lot of warnings or other things that had built up to this, I could see it being like, okay, maybe they should at some point escalate something like this to a double prize penalty. But as far as I don't know if Rahul had any priors, warnings or stuff leading up to that throughout the
Sure.
tournament. So I really, yeah, not a fan of how this went, and they do need to really change that thing about the on-stream thing. But they have to stop forcing players to not lay out their prize cards. It just does not matter. Why are they forcing players to wait to lay out their prize cards until they're told to? It should just be set up fully. Just lay out your prize cards. They can just switch over to the prize cam and just see both players' prize cards whenever. You don't need to see me lay out my prize cards on stream for me to potentially have a gameplay error like Rahul had. So definitely should stop doing that. That's ridiculous. And I've kind of always felt that way because it's like I said, it's come up to me before. I've almost drawn my mulligan ahead of my prize cards. I've seen my opponent almost draw their mulligan over their prize card. So like they really need to cut that out on the production side of things for the stream.
Yeah, we'll see. Maybe that's something that can be addressed moving forward. It's not something I've like really thought about much before because I've never been in that situation. I've never really seen like I've seen it come up once or twice, but I don't think I've ever seen it necessarily result in a penalty. Maybe
Yep.
it's like I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's always been a situation of someone getting caught before it happens, and this is the first time I've at least noticed it like actually happen to someone. But yeah, we'll see.
But what do you think about like Jake Earhart's comment then? Actually, like on the like there definitely is people
Oh,
play.
yeah, yeah, no, I think it's
Uh,
totally fair, and especially, like, I think that nuance has to come into play as well, where it's like, okay, the deck is random, 6 random cards go to the prizes, 1 random card goes to the hand, right? Like, assuming that is the correct way to think about it, which I don't see why it wouldn't be. Um, I've heard people give the argument of, no, those top 6 cards have to be Rahul's prize cards because what if there's a marked card and now Rahul knows something or like is trying to like reveal a card because he doesn't want it to be in his prize cards. And I say that he's in top 4, that his deck has been checked multiple times at this point. There
yeah,
should not be any marked cards, and I don't think that you should operate on the assumption that marked cards are existing in someone's deck, and that is why this super niche instance like thing should be applied like that.
yeah,
Um, but no, I think that it's totally fair for de-escalation to occur in regards to um
match.
yeah, yeah, because like it is tough to get up there on the stage and play, and um there's a lot like the adjusting to the wire, especially if you've never done it before. Like it doesn't phase you as much because you've done it a dozen times. But people who like it's their first time getting up there, um, it's jarring. The lights are bright, the white noise, you're hearing your opponent amplified in your ears talking to you as well. Like, yeah, it's totally different.
And you definitely want
Um,
that to be an experience players strive for, right? Is to get on
right,
stage and play on
right.
stream. You don't want to be something people dread to go do because of the amount of um, prize penalties and stuff that you see consistently happen on stream and stuff like that, and look at have it come off as kind of like presumably a bad experience. So you definitely want it to be a good experience for players.
Yep. And then I mean, and there was also like it felt like a little inconsistency in this event with some of these rulings as well because you didn't get a prize penalty for something that happened to you in top 4, which I think you should have.
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't think I know you. I don't think you were doing anything malicious, but and it would be a silly time for this to be the thing you were maliciously trying to do, right? Where pretty much in top 4 against Owen, Owen playing Mew VMAX, Azul attacked with his Drapion, and Drapion's attack requires you to, after you attack with it, place 6 damage counters on one of your Pokemon. And Azul forgot to do that, and he took his prize card. Now, theoretically, the prize card Azul took has given him information. This could affect where he wants to put his 60 damage, and his opponent has already done multiple actions during his turn. It could also affect where Azul wants to put the damage. So theoretically, even though in this exact instance, I think your damage is always going on a Rangaroo, and it seems like you and Owen at the table both agreed the damage was always going on a Rangaroo, which is maybe partially why the penalty wasn't escalated any further. But it's just kind of silly that that happened. All these actions happened. You see an extra card. You now get to place your 60 damage where you want it to go. And then Rahul, made just one tiny little mistake when his deck is still randomized that resulted in a 2 prize penalty, and you got no penalty for it.
I think that is fair for like to look at it, especially yeah, like in my game against Owen, we agreed that or he agreed that it wouldn't have changed any of his plays and agreed that I also my damage is always going on my Orangaroo. So that like apparently was enough to not have a prize penalty. If Owen had pushed harder for it, I think I maybe would have gotten a prize penalty. And push harder for me to have a prize penalty or whatever, and saying, it could have changed my plays for this reason and that reason and so on. I don't think it ever does. So I appreciate Owen's honesty in that situation for sure. 'Cause I don't think me putting my 6 damage on Guru is ever gonna like change like or where or not Guru or not being on Guru ever changes Owen's plays one way or the other, right? It's always looking for Path plus or Lost City plus Roxanne that turn, right? So I appreciate Owen's honesty for sure. But yeah, I can definitely see that. Like on like looking at it, there should be definitely I agree there should be consistency for sure. And I would like it to go the route of Rahul probably should have got a prize penalty
Right.
as opposed to me getting a prize penalty, even though it was to my benefit to not get a prize penalty there. I think it's just like the way it should go in those situations. Like if me and Owen can agree that it doesn't change anything about the board state, or I guess Owen specifically agrees with me that it doesn't change anything about the board state, um, then there should be no prize penalty there, right? If both players can agree, just like how I kind of was like with Shinoy's thing, I was arguing that Shinoy shouldn't get a penalty there because of the taking him out of his comfort zone, taking out of his like natural habit of where his prize cards usually are and his deck usually are. Like Shinoy shouldn't get a prize card penalty, and Rahul shouldn't have got a prize penalty either, because once again, taken out of your it's just force. And I think Rahul's was probably the worst, actually, looking back on it, to be
Yeah.
honest, because you're taken out of your natural habit with how you play the game, and then also it shouldn't matter, which I didn't really think about until we talked about it before the cast. You're like, well, it's just all truly random, right? Like the top 7 cards are random, so once into the hand, 6 are into the prize cards, right? So I think Rahul's is actually the worst. It's the worst. The worst is that Rahul got the prize penalty more so than anything. I think looking back on it, um, but yeah, I can definitely see like it definitely seems like for sure that I should have got a prize penalty there, and I think that's reasonable.
Yeah, well, and maybe some of this stuff will be changed before our next couple of ICs, EUIC and NAIC coming up. And speaking of NAIC, I like that little transition there, speaking
Yeah,
of
biggest thing is consistency
NAIC,
for sure.
yeah. Speaking of NAIC, Pokemon has updated the tournament's information page for both the regional and international championships, confirming the dates of the North American International Championships, which will be the last weekend of June, first weekend of July. So it's like June 30th to July the 3rd or something like that. Which is I think a little bit later than when it was originally posted on the site. But it looks like there's been like some adjustments made alongside that. We're actually like in a different couple of halls than the halls we are normally in for NAIC, which is pretty interesting. Um, I don't know. Yeah, Azul, you got any thoughts on that?
Um, no, I mean, I told you it's about the time that it usually is, right? This is usually, I feel like NAIC or US Nats lined up with July 4th, like a ridiculous amount of years in a row, and now we've been kind of like bumping around between. Has it ever gone? Have we ever gone too deep in July for NAIC before, or has it always been like June into July or end of June sometimes, right?
I think it used to be 4th of July weekend for a while,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So it's
It's 4th of
always like
July for
that
a while.
first weekend. Maybe the second weekend one year, like the weekend after 4th of July, something like that, but
Yeah.
never too deep. Yeah.
I mean, it's good to get the dates out early, of course, with this being the biggest event of the year, right? Most amount of players are gonna be traveling to this. I guess actually, to be honest, with how many Pokemon players there are in Japan, I could see Worlds being bigger just based on like spectators, right? There could be like an
Yeah. Number of
insane
people
amount of
with feet in the
spectators.
venue. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but competitor wise, NAIC is always going to be the biggest event of every single year. And yeah, it's good they got the dates out. This is reasonable, right? Reasonable time to get the dates out. We know where it is. And yeah, hall size looking pretty big. Like I said, hopefully there's enough space for us to hit the 2K mark. Or at the very least not have it cap in like the first, hour or so. And hopefully registration is open for a little while. So everyone who wants to go there will be able to, get a registration slot.
Yeah, so in the past, NAIC has been held in halls C and D. I've got a little map pulled up here on the YouTube for those of you watching on YouTube. Hall C is 70,000 square feet, and Hall D is 87,000, or is that 67? It's a little distorted. It looks smaller in the picture. So, regardless, it's less than 100,000 square feet there. Um,
Yeah.
and then if you look at the halls we are going to be now this year in Hall A and Hall B, which Hall B holds 118,000 people, and Hall A is also kind of distorted, but it
They
holds,
look bigger. I
it
mean, Hall
does
B looks
it
as big
does
as
look
C and
bigger.
D.
Exactly. So, I mean, I think this is probably a pretty decent sign that they're anticipating and preparing for this to be the
Biggest tournament ever.
largest tournament ever, yeah, in North
Outside of
America,
Japan.
at least the
Yeah.
western side of the world.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely excited for it. I mean, I've been in, um, these halls before for Origins. I went to the Origins special event one year. They are definitely massive, massive
Mhm.
rooms. Um, so yeah, and there's also, I think, on the internationals page, it's also got confirmation that Pokemon Unite would be at the tournament as well. So that adds like a whole nother layer of competitors, spectators, all that going on. So yeah, definitely interesting points to look at with as far as how
What week
big it could
is
be.
what week is Origins?
It's
It's
the
the week
week
before.
before, I believe. Yes.
I wonder if they were gonna have a special event at Origins or not, because we did have one.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Was it the last NAIC pre-COVID we had special event? Or was it no? It was maybe no, was it? It might have been.
I think so. Yeah. I think
Yeah.
so.
So I wonder if we'll get that
Um,
Origin special event or not. And it's not even like it's not even just good for North American players, but we had quite a few other international players I think come over and play in that as well, if I remember correctly last time. Like because it'll be like the
usually.
week before. Some people came out like a week before, played in that, if I remember correctly. So yeah, I wonder if we'll have anything like that happening or not. That'd be interesting though. Yeah, because I wasn't sure if it was the week before or week after. But yeah, biggest North American event ever. It's looking like it's gonna be. Hopefully we can break. I just want us to break the 2K TCG match. I think we'll be able to. I think we're like I don't know why we wouldn't be able to. I mean, we had 1,500 players at Orlando Regionals, so I think breaking 2K for NAIC, as long as there's the space, wouldn't be too difficult.
Yeah, I think it's definitely feasible. We'll see though what happens. I mean that requires a lot of staff, a lot of other things going on. But yeah, the NAIC dates were not the only things that were updated over on the regionals page. There was the addition of a couple of Latin America regionals. I'm pretty sure Sao Paulo regionals and Santiago in Chile in May and June, which is great for the Latin America player base because I think other than that, their only regionals was Natal, which is like really far away and really difficult to travel to from what I understand, and it also I think it like capped really fast. So I think there's it's definitely good that the LATAM player base is getting more tournaments, but the Oceania player base was a little bit up in arms today on Twitter, Azul, because the Sydney Regional Championships was moved. It was originally supposed to be taking place in May, and
Yep.
now its date has been changed. People were kind of hoping this was intentional, was to April 1st. Everyone was hoping it was an April Fool's joke, but no, it is
Pokemon's not
indeed
that
taking
funny.
place April 1st. Which means a couple of things. First off, it was on the Pokemon website that it was a different date, so people had already booked travel. Now they have to try to reschedule.
Yep.
And also that means that the players will have to be playing in this same current Lugia format, which means all of Oceania's 4
Major
CP
tournaments.
awarding tournaments, assuming no league cups happen, which at this point, who knows, right? Um, if there is no league cups, 4 CP awarding tournaments, OCIC and the 3 regionals are all in this same Lugia format. RIP to Oceania, man.
Yeah, that's rough to be honest. This has been a very unfortunate extended format for sure. I mean, it's bad for us here because we still have like what 4 regionals in this format, and that's like the majority of our regionals left were in this have been in because like ground teams really didn't change anything, right? It's basically an extended format. But yeah, it's even worse for yeah, it's even worse for Australia. They only get to play in the Lugia format. That sounds so sick. So sick for sure. So I hopefully they get like I'm hoping that they get like another regional or some special events towards the later half of the season to kind of make up for the lack of tournaments that they have. Um, of course, they did get a pretty big CP boost from OCIC, of course, but still, they only have the 3 regionals plus OCIC to get championship points. So what is it? They need 200 now, right?
I think
Um,
so. And looking at the leaderboard right now, there are 13 Australians qualified for Worlds.
is that
So I'm
with
pretty
OCIC?
sure this includes OCIC. It might not, though.
Okay,
Yeah, no, it probably does.
yeah, I would say so.
Looking at these numbers, because
It has to because
Mia
yeah,
got top
that's Mia's
32, and that's
that's Mia's first
160
tournament.
points, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they mentioned that was their first tournament ever was OCIC. So, I mean, you can see like there, Henry Brand is sitting at 190 points, doesn't even have their invite yet, and they only have one more tournament to potentially get it, or I guess 2. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Henry show up at NAIC. But if Henry only plans to stay within Australia for tournaments, then if they miss the points at the last one, then we won't have Henry at Worlds potentially, which would kind of suck. I'm sure they'll get it. I'm sure they'll get their last 10
Yeah,
points,
I'm not
but
worried about that. Henry's
but
got
yeah,
it, right?
yeah, I would guess so. But yeah, it does. It's kind of unfortunate. I mean, it sucks that they have to play all of their tournaments in this format. Um, and on top of that, they only have the 4 tournaments. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty rough. I definitely feel for them for sure.
And
And they got bumped. Do you have
yeah,
the
so
uh
ESL Australia, someone they tweeted out about the event, and someone from Australia asked like why did this event date get changed, which I think is fair. And it's actually cool. Australia, ESL Australia did have transparency and explained what happened. So pretty much what happened was, first off, apologies, issues you and others affected. To expand on the exact reasons behind the date change, although our team had locked in venue options for the original dates, our venue was our event was bumped out by another international sporting event coming in over the top of it with no options for us to remain. We would always recommend players not to book non refundable flights or accommodation until having a confirmed registration to the event. We appreciate this is still frustrating to those who have made plans and exhausted all their options in an attempt to keep the event on the dates originally listed on Pokemon.com. We'll be sharing additional info on registrations and more at Sydney soon. So, I
One
mean,
thing
it definitely feels like they tried everything they could. And I don't think this is, I mean, it sounds like pretty much another event came in and outbid ESL for this
yeah.
space, which is maybe kind of more on the venue than anything. It's kind of like, crappy of the venue to like give up this space. I don't know if contracts had not been signed yet or what the deal is. I don't really know the inner workings of it, but at minimum, ESL was pretty transparent and straight up with what happened. But then it was
It
discovered
feels
the
one thing I
event
mentioned on
that
that,
yeah,
it
go
feels
ahead.
pretty bad for them to say, "Wait until you confirm your registration before you book anything," but then they open up registration for their events, like, 3 weeks before the event happens,
This is
right?
true.
Like
Yes. Yeah.
you can't like, how are you gonna say that? And I hear it's pretty rough to, I think, travel in Australia, like, it's expensive, right? Even within Australia, to travel within Australia, from what
Yeah.
I've heard, like, so for them to say, "You shouldn't be booking you shouldn't be locking in your travel or, accommodations until you've registered for the event," and then to not open registration for their events until like 3 weeks before the event, right? That's what happened with Brisbane, I believe, or Perth. I forget which one. I think it was Brisbane. I don't know.
Yeah.
That feels yeah, crappy. Like, once again, feel for the Australian players for sure.
And then it was discovered by, I don't know if Sablaz was the one who discovered it, but he tweeted it. Here it is, guys. The reason our season was ruined, and it is the Cake, Bake, and Sweets Show, Australia's ultimate event for baking and cake decorating enthusiasts, foodies, and families, taking
Wait, is
place.
this for sure? Is that confirmed?
I mean, I don't know how big the venue is. Maybe this is just in a different hall, but
Oh.
it's a good meme either way, right?
Yeah. And I saw
One of
someone
the
else tweet.
replies to this was
Oh, go
like,
ahead.
one of the replies to this was, yeah, Connor Fenton said, on the
Yeah.
bright side, everyone with non-refundable flights has a cool baking event to go
Yeah.
to.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna go, I mean, you could still have something to do, I guess, at the very least. Try out some cake. I'm a big fan of cake personally, so I wouldn't be complaining too much personally if I had my flight locked up to go there.
Yeah, but are
I would
you
still
going to
show
pay
up.
hundreds of dollars to go try some cake,
I don't know, cake's pretty good. Depends how much the cake is. Like, is the cake free if you just have the pass and you just show up? Like, are you able to just like sample different cakes and stuff? I don't know. But yeah, that definitely sucks. Definitely sucks for sure. And I hope something happens, like special events or some more regionals get added for them for sure, because yeah,
If
3
nothing else,
regionals
just
all
for
in
an
the same format.
opportunity to play a different format,
Yeah,
man.
that's
Like,
the
come
biggest thing. Like, it
on.
gets worse for them. It, like, continuously gets worse for them. Like,
Let alone qualifying for worlds, like just being able to play Pokemon. That's what most people want to do, right? Like, I mean,
yep.
looking at these numbers for Australia, even with 200 championship points, if there's only what 13 people now, like, I mean, what is Australia going to have at the end of the season? 25, 30 people qualify for worlds. There's going to be
I don't even know
200
if they
people who
get
play in
that.
their tournaments, right? So
Yeah.
like the majority of the people are playing in this tournament realizing they're not going to get a worlds invite. They just want to go play Pokemon.
Mhm. Yeah.
And they have to play Lugia format. Have fun,
Yeah.
guys. Have fun.
If there was ever a reason to not play Lugia in a Lugia format tournament, I think it would be where you need to get, a couple points for your Worlds invite. Are you gonna risk it all in a bunch of mirror matches? I don't know if you wanna do that, so, um, yeah, but, rough.
Well, Azul, I think from there we can move on to everyone's
Oh, I guess one last
favorites.
one last thing we can mention, there was also the 2 Latin America, or did we already mention that? The 2 Latin America? Well, we did talk about that, didn't we?
We
Alright,
did.
you got it, Chip. Alright, let's move on to everyone's favorite segment of the podcast, Guess That Flavor Text, where one of us picks a card and reads the flavor text on it, and then the other host tries to guess what Pokemon that flavor text is from and the card belongs to. If you guess it right without using any lifelines, you get 4 points, and there is 3 lifelines you can use for each lifeline you use. You do lose a point, and the lifelines are what set the card is from, what stage the card is, and then read an attack name on the card. Chip, are you ready for your card this week? Currently, I'm leading by 2 points. Ready?
I'm so ready, and I'm so ready to get ahead. Probably not.
The protuberances on its head serve as
Whoa.
sensors. It can even detect distant prey.
The protuberances on its head serve as sensors. So this sounds like some sort of like water type Pokemon, to be honest. My first thought was like Mantine for some reason, but I don't know that. I mean, it's got just kind of like a U head. I don't know if that's like a manta ray. I don't know if that's a protuberance. Um,
It's the first time I've ever had to read that word before.
protuberance. It could also be like maybe like a. I mean, it could be like some sort of like ground type Pokemon that's like digging in the ground looking for prey, or like a bug. I don't know, man. This is kind of tough. Maybe I'm not gonna be getting ahead this week. I might have to use some lifelines here. I'm gonna start with read an attack name, I think.
Has quick dive.
Ooh. So that kind of sounds like a water or maybe a flying type Pokemon, like quick dive from the air down. So protuberance on the head as a flying type. I mean, maybe if it's like a bug flying type, something like that. Like things like moths have bad eyesight. Oh, maybe it's Butterfree.
Do moths have bad eyesight? Is that like a thing?
Well, I don't know. Butterfree's got those big pink eyes, but it's got a little antenna on the top, doesn't it? Or maybe Venomoth. What stage is the card? Let me use another lifeline.
Is stage 2.
Man, I'm kind of thinking Butterfree maybe. And also because like as soon as I said Butterfree, you were like, do moths have bad eyesight?
I'm just curious. Is that like a thing? Like I've never heard
He's
that
trying to
before.
throw me off the scent here, Azul. Okay, he's trying to
I
throw me
was
off
just
the scent.
curious.
All
I'm
right,
actually gonna Google it right now.
I'm gonna. Yeah, they're like nocturnal, right? They can't see except at night. But Butterfree's not even a moth; it's a freaking butterfly. So,
No, moths are not blind, nor do they have bad eyesight. Moths actually have 2 sets of eyes, so they see twice as good.
all right,
Uh,
over information overload here. Information overload. You're trying to throw me off the scent. I'm gonna
all right.
use my last lifeline. I'm gonna ask what set the card is from. Go for
It
all
is
three.
from Forbidden Light.
Hmm. I do not think there is a Butterfree in Forbidden Light. It is a stage 2. Oh man. Quick dive is the attack. It's a stage 2. Oh, Forbidden Light. That's the
Wait, hang on.
Malamar.
Let
That's
me
the
make sure that
Malamar set.
let me make sure it's Forbidden Light.
Oh my gosh. How do you not just have it pulled up on PKM and cards? It literally tells you on the page what set it's from.
I had to pull those. It is Forbidden Light. Yeah, okay.
Okay. That's the Malamar set, Ultra Necrozma. Um Man. Quick dive. I'm just not even thinking of. All right, let me hear the flavor text one more time. Protuberance to find prey, right?
The protuberances on its head serve as sensors. It can even detect distant prey.
Distant prey. I really got nothing here, man. There's not a Butterfree in the set. There's no shot. I know I need to guess. Quick dive. I think it must be some sort of flying type Pokemon. I'm thinking like Pidgeot. I don't think there's a Pidgeot in Forbidden Light. I'm sorry, guys. I know this is like very annoying. All
All right,
right,
Chip, you're on
I'm
the
gonna guess
clock.
like I think the Unpheasant that I'm thinking of is from like I think it's from Unified Minds. Yeah, I just don't know. I think this is an L for me this week. I'm gonna guess unpheasant.
It is not unpheasant. I don't believe there's an unpheasant in Forbidden Light.
I
There
don't think
is,
so either.
however, a Pavilion. But it's
Mm.
not Pavilion. It's
Oh,
Garchomp.
what?
It's
I
kind of
did
like the
say ground
Rockets.
type. I did
You
say
did.
ground
I thought you
type.
had it. I was like, oh shoot. I was just like,
Mm.
how many points is he getting now? And you're like digging in the
Quick
ground,
dive.
ground type.
Dang, its other attack is Royal Blades. If you had said that, I
Yeah.
would have gotten it
Oh
for
yeah.
sure. Dang it, man.
I was never saying Royal Blades. I wasn't sure. I wasn't gonna. I had like when I pulled up the card, I was like, oh, I can't pick this. It has Royal Blades. I was like, oh, but Quick Dive. I actually thought this one would be one you'd maybe get. To be honest, maybe I did pick a
No,
little
that's
bit of a too hard
fair.
of one.
No, I don't
Um,
think so.
I thought this one was like reasonable.
It
I was like,
is
yeah,
the
I can't say.
second print of the card, which is like kind of annoying. It's not
Hmm.
the one that came out in the same set as Cynthia, which is like the card
I
it
didn't even think
works
about
with.
that.
Yeah.
It's a good thing I
So
found this one first, not
yeah,
the
because
other
you
one.
just as easily could have picked the dragon type one. That is the exact same card. That's from
That was from.
Ultra Prism, which is where
But
Cynthia came out.
would that have given you a hint towards Garchomp if I had said
Yeah, I
Ultra
wouldn't. I
Prism?
didn't think about Garchomp existing in this set. I maybe would have remembered Garchomp existing in Ultra Prism though.
I didn't even remember that there was a dragon and a fighting type one. To be honest.
Yeah, that was
All
kind of
right.
a cool era where they like did that, where there was like a few
Yeah.
Pokemon, like the Empoleon, right? Maybe
Wasn't dual types, but
what the Terrastal mechanic could have been, but instead it's just freaking bench barrier.
I mean, maybe they're gonna do something with it where they're gonna print some item
They're
cards
not
that is.
Azul. There's no
Yeah.
shot.
Okay. All right.
It's
Well, I tried.
cringe. It's just cringe. It's all cringe.
All right. To close out the show tonight, we got 2 regional championships coming up this weekend.
Yeah, and I think
Bochum.
we can run through this pretty quick
Yeah.
because we're already at like an hour and a half on the episode. So
All right, Bochum and Knoxville regionals this weekend. And the first thing we kind of thought of when we were coming up with things to talk about for the event is what is there really to say? Does anything like actually drastically change? I mean, I think it's going to be Lugia 40%, Lost Box 20%, Mew between 12 and 15%, and then Reggie's 5, Arctura 5. Vault might see a spike.
yeah, Vikavolt might see. I don't know if it'll see a spike
Vikavolt.
in play, but it might see a spike in results. I think that's maybe fair to say. But it's never going to be a deck that, like, since it's not going to be that played, it's never going to be a deck that we see like 2 or 3 of in top 8. I don't think, but like I think it's the deck that we will see one in top 32, and it's like in top 8. I think that's totally reasonable, right?
Yeah. I think
So, yeah, I mean, there's 4 more NA regionals in this format, which is so crazy. It's
Just
this.
half
We've got Knoxville, Vancouver, Charlotte, and Fort Wayne
yeah.
in the next 2 months, all in
It's
this format.
half of our regionals left are in this format. We have
Yeah.
4 regionals left after that, and then like I said, Australia, all of their regionals are left in this format. Latin America has their last 2 regionals are outside of this format. Thankfully for them, and in Europe, they only have 1 regional left on the schedule. Actually, it is outside of this format. Oh no, they have 2. They have
And they have some
Bochum.
special events as well.
They have some special events, so they have at least 1 event outside of it, I guess. Actually, I'm gonna look at the Europeans. I'm just curious now, like how
They have
many
like
of
3
us.
special events left, I think.
March.
Like
Oh, they have a special event in this
and
format still as
yeah.
well. And then they have one outside of this format. So many events are going to happen in this format. Majority, I mean, we say this format. Technically, we did get a set release of Crown Zenith, but no one actually thinks that way.
We almost made it
very
a whole
lackluster.
episode without Azul dunking on Crown Zenith, but
Such a bad set. Changed almost absolutely nothing. Just kind of shook up how you play some Lost Box builds, but I don't think it would have actually changed how like effective Lost Box would be in a format overall. I guess it did boost Lost Box a little bit, right? But that's kind of all we got was Lost Box had some more
how
tools to
often
work
did
with.
you use Sky Seal Stone in the tournament? How many times?
Use it against Mew every game. I played against 2 Mews. Use it against Arcturas. I played against 2 Arcturas. That's it, I think. I didn't use it against Lugia once. I don't even know if I used Dragonite besides my Arctura matchups, to be honest. So it came up almost in the finals against Reagan, but not quite. Yeah. It was not did not use it very much against the top deck, but it was good against all the fringe stuff. So that's cool.
Sure.
I guess it's almost everything is fringe besides Lugia or Lost Box at this point, to be honest. Like you might hit it, you might see Mew in a tournament, you might not. It wouldn't be that big of a surprise if you don't hit a single Mew or a Reggie or anything like that. But yeah, majority of tournaments left are in this format, which is unfortunate, I think, for everyone playing the game, especially the Australians. Yeah, I guess like one thing we could talk about is lack of Dunsparce in Lugia at OCIC was interesting. I definitely liked it. I'm pretty sure Rahul liked it with playing the Reggies as well. So we were big fans of the lack of Dunsparce, but I think that was kind of an int from anyone who chose to not play Dunsparce. I mean, Reagan still made it to the finals. Raz made top 8. Did lose to Rahul though in the top 8. But yeah, I think people are going to be putting their Dunsparces back in after OCIC for sure. I can't imagine not playing Dunsparce, to be honest.
Yeah, it was like a 50-50 card. 57% of the day 2 players had it, and I think if
And
you, like, look a little closer, um, yeah, like you mentioned, the top 8 players didn't have it. None of them had it. Or did
well,
Grant
no,
Shin have it?
Grand Shin did,
Yeah,
yeah.
Grant Shin had it, but if we look down to the top 16, Pedro did not have it.
Oh, did have it. There's Dunsparce on the bottom there. You missed it.
Bro, I'm trolling, it's right there. There
Yeah.
he is. Hey, what's up, Dunsparce? Carlos.
Yeah, Yurko, 3 of the top 8 Lugias did not
Okay.
have Dunsparce. But then once you get outside of that, I mean, it's probably just like a margin of error of who had Dunsparce in Top Gun and who didn't, right?
Yeah.
But I think moving forward, you gotta rock the Dunsparce, right? Especially like I won the tournament, had the Zeraora in there. It's so much harder to beat Lugia if they don't have it. You had Pedro in there with the Raikou V, and I even talked about adding Raikou V potentially to my list. Would maybe be a good inclusion to have like another option against Lugia to have that alongside the Sky Seal Stone, a little bit more of aggressive option for KOs on Lugias
Mhm.
outside the Dragonite. So that's like yeah, I think you got like just moving forward. I can't imagine not playing Dunsparce at OCIC. Quite a few people did that. Moving forward, you definitely can't not play the Dunsparce, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's gotta be pretty worthwhile. It's a one card inclusion that fixes one of the deck's main weaknesses, right? So, pun intended. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's part of what makes Lugia hard to counter. Is
Yeah.
Dunsparce. And if you're not playing it, yeah, like I mean, your Lost Box and Reggie's matchups, which are like two of the other more popular matchups that are maybe going to be a little sketchy for you, become much, much, much worse.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
yeah, so I guess one question to answer would be like, where in the Lugia cycle are we? Like, how susceptible is Lugia currently to things like control and paralysis? If we look at the OCIC lists, most people were pretty prepared for both of those things. And honestly, like control was like reasonably popular at the
Yeah.
tournaments. Like for control, like I think it's as popular as control ever will be as for like a fringe deck. But like I was walking around during like round 5 or 6, looking at the top, 50, 60 tables, and there was, like, not a insignificant amount of control amongst those players.
Yeah, I feel like every round I was sitting next to someone playing control, almost every round. There was a decent amount of control for sure. A lot of the Japanese players brought it specifically, but just in general, there was a decent amount of control and did okay in day 2. Nothing great, nothing, no real standout performance, I guess overall. But I think there were some people playing like Snorlax plus Birdkeeper. I think the Bird Keepers and like the escape rope that like Raz had alongside the Irida, I think that will stay. So the switch cards I think will continue to be played. I think it just gives you such a good matchup spread as Lugia to have something like the one of switch card. Like you don't lose all of a sudden to so many other cheesy stuff, just like the Dunsparce. And it's like not a bad card to have around, especially if it's like the Bird Keeper, because then it's also like a draw supporter as well, like a pseudo draw supporter, not quite as powerful as a Marnie or a Research, but still pretty strong. So I think less people will have stuff like Snorlax, Birdkeeper. Less people will have Birdkeeper and Switch cards in general going into Knoxville. But it still feels like there'll probably be too many people with a Switch card in their Lugia list to want to play something too paralysis heavy or too. I mean, Control is a little bit different. Like Control can definitely beat a Switch card. What Control is more scared of is like the Snorlax plus Switch card combo. So there'll probably be quite a bit less of that. So I think Control is probably in like a little bit better of a spot. But even just like the Switch card itself is really annoying for Control, to be honest. So I would say paralysis decks are probably still on the stocks are still pretty down on those, but control is like going to be feeling a little bit better after OCIC for sure. Maybe not quite enough to want to actually play it though.
So we talked a little bit about Vikavolt. Feels like it could be in an okay spot. It's never gonna be the most popular deck. I
Very
don't know, how do
targeted
you
deck.
feel about Vikavolt? You kinda mentioned, like,
Um,
at the beginning that it was a deck you guys had thought about at least a little bit before OCIC.
yeah, I mean, maybe its best time kind of was OCIC because people were cutting Dunsparce, which makes your aggressive prize trade with like Raikou plus Sky Seal Stone really good. So maybe the best time for Vikavolt was kind of OCIC, and now it's going to get a little bit worse because I would expect the Dunsparces to be a little bit more popular moving forwards. But even with Dunsparce, the deck is still solid, I think, overall. I think more people are going to start to gravitate towards it a little bit. It feels like the deck that, and it's maybe just one of those decks that people just don't enjoy playing overall. But it feels like it does get kind of left to the wayside a little bit for how good it is versus how many people play. I know Grant hates the deck, but like I think that Vikavolt still a pretty solid choice, and I think it's probably still pretty solid going forward, even despite people probably going up in Dunsparce count, because the deck is still reasonable against Dunsparce. If the deck couldn't beat Dunsparce Lugia, it would be terrible, but I think it's fine up against Dunsparce Lugia, so it'll probably
Yeah,
get a little bit more popular moving
yeah.
forward.
I think Grant's hatred for the deck is going to make it very difficult for you guys to ever play it for a tournament because he's just going to be vehemently against it during the whole testing process. But
Yeah, I think it's
um,
decent.
yeah. All right. And if people are wanting to play Lost Box, is the best way to play it. Just roll up with the 60 that Azul just won the tournament with, maybe adding in the Raikou V somewhere.
I don't know. I think Wash Energy was what in 25% of the decks. My prediction with 30%. I think it'll theoretically go down further, which means I think Kyogre becomes a little bit stronger. We did see the highest placing Australian player Aiden rocking the Kyogre still themselves. So
And you
Kyogre's still
coached
out
Aiden
there.
as well, right?
Yeah, and like Kyogre's that's what someone in my group says. But Kyogre's literally the Aqua Storm is literally the strongest thing you can do in the game right now. Doing 250 damage to potentially 2 of your opponent's Pokemon is literally the most powerful like move in the game right now. Is the Kyogre. So I think Kyogre is still pretty good. I think one of the best attackers actually into Lugia is the Raikou, with the amazing shot. Being able to do like potentially 300, put 360 damage counters on their board, and then potentially be able to utilize all that damage that gets put into play afterwards. It's pretty good. Yeah, so I expect less wash energy. So I think just kind of snipe stuff in general in Lost Box decks is going to be better. Kyogre, Raikou, there'll be less wash energy to deal with. There wasn't that much to deal with to begin with. Like I said, I think in day 2 there was 25%, right? 25% of Lugia's had 23% of Lucas had the wash energy, which makes it pretty hard to use Kyogre or Raikou because they put down their mana feed with the wash energy. And you could play boss and boss up the mana feed, but that does kind of set you behind a turn potentially of like digging through your deck. Instead of playing Colress and using Sableye to kill the mana feed, using boss instead of return is not something you want to be doing. So, but we'll have to wait and see. But I think wash energy will probably go down overall. So I think playing stuff like Kyogre and Raikou moving forward would be good. But even just playing something like I played without a snipe attacker or something like Pedro played as well, would be still a pretty solid choice moving forward for Lost Box stuff. There's just so many different ways to play the deck, and they're all just like pretty good. And then whenever you have something, I don't know, just having like something in your deck that you don't think your opponent's gonna know about, and it's so easy to fit those kind of things in your deck is like super powerful as well. Just trying to
So at
fit other
OCIC
stuff in
this
there.
weekend, there was a bit of a resurgence from Fusion Mew. It felt like obviously Owen Cameron got top 4 with the Mew Aerodactyl, which is the best placing Mew. But Fusion Mew won in the juniors division as
Mhm.
a student of yours, Remy. And then it also got top 16 from David Derritan playing the Fusion Mew. I don't know. Yeah, is there any reason to like reconsider Fusion Mew maybe for the first time in a few months?
It just feels like your Lost Box matchup is worse as Fusion because you have less consistent disruption options like the Roxanne and stuff. It's like harder to want to play. And we even see in David's list, there's no Roxanne. There's still like a Path of the Peak, some Lost Cities, but yeah, your Lost Box matchup is tougher with the Fusion build because you have to like you want to build a little bit more aggressively. Like you have to play the Fusion stuff to begin with, the 4 Fusion Energy, some Sparkles, and then
The
generally you want
Meloetta.
to play a more aggressive list. But if we look at David's list, 3 Cramomatic, still really heavy on the double turbo energy with 4. That's the first card I'm cutting from this list for sure, to be honest, personally. I'm cutting one of those 4 double turbos. That's 8 energy in a Mew deck. That's a lot of energy.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know if it's better than double turbo Mew because I feel like your Lost Box matchup is just worse than double turbo Mew. So that's kind of my but I think your Lugia matchup is better. So a little bit better matchup against the most popular deck, a little bit worse matchup against the second most popular deck. But I guess if once you get to day 2, the most popular deck does become quite a bit more popular. Like we even saw at the results from most of the tournaments most recently, the uh, you know, Lugia is going up in percentage by quite a bit from day 1 to day 2, whereas Lost Box kind of maintains, right? Like Lost Box is going from like 20 to 20, Lugia is going from like 30 to 40 to 50%, right? So there are some additional advantage to be gained there by playing the Fusion Mew because it also like makes your price trade a little bit more nice against a Lugia deck because you can go like Meloetta into Mew, and you actually get to use 4 attackers in the game, which can really just like make it so you kind of just always win the prize trade up against Lugia depending on what they actually have on board. So I think there's some merit to it for sure, but the Lost Box matchup is like the drawback.
All right. And then Gudra or Arcdura, Azul. What are your thoughts? You had to play one. I put a gun to your head. You got to play one of these 2 decks, Azul. What are you doing?
Well, ideally, I'd play neither. So if you have a choice to play neither, I'd go with neither. Um, if I had to pick one, I don't know, to be honest. That's tough. I'm leaning towards Gudra, but I don't think there's gonna be like canceling Cologne and stuff going forwards. Like almost no one played at
Yep.
OCIC. So I feel like there's not gonna be any extra Arc Dura hate, like uncalled for Arc Dura hate. So I'd probably say go with Arc Dura, to be honest. And I don't think that the Lugia decks will be playing like the canceling Cologne. Most people don't already play like double vacuum, I feel like, for the most part. I might be wrong on that overall. Like Raz only plays one, but that's because Raz also plays the Irida. Reagan played the double vacuum, I believe. But then if we look at like Yurko had the Irida one back, and then Grant Shen, I believe, had one back as well. So yeah, I would say probably Arctura right now. I don't think anyone's gonna be rocking canceling Cologne. There's not really a reason to, it feels like.
Yeah, the way Lugia lists are going, feel like Arctura is just getting to be like a more and more questionable matchup. You're always
It's
gonna
still
lose
not a
to
great deck.
you're always gonna lose to Mew. It feels like, right? Maybe
Yeah.
not Fusion Mew though. If Fusion Mew's going up, oh well, I guess Fusion
Nah,
Mew
you still
does.
lose.
They
They
do
still have
more
like one
damage with
horde.
Max Miracle now, so it's
Yeah.
maybe just worse actually. Even if
It's
they
just
don't have
bad.
past the peak, right? Um,
Yeah, Mew's always gonna be a bad time. But Arctura still
yeah,
is only like if you go second against Lugia, like it's I feel like Arctura, it's hard for Arctura to get better than 50-50 against Lugia the majority of the time, to be honest. It feels like it's pretty close to 50-50.
sure.
Maybe if they have like nothing, like no one's really taking it all for it, then maybe Arctura has a slight edge, but it's not by a whole ton. And then you're also playing Arctura, like you said, gotta have to worry about stuff like Dragonite and Lost Box decks, and then your
Yep.
Mew matchup is not great.
And let's close it out with some predictions. So we've got 2 regional championships this weekend. So we're going to be doing predictions looking at the 2 regional championships, Bochum and Knoxville. Over under Lugia's in cuts. We're going to set the over under for both regionals now at 7.5. So do you think Lugia will make up 50% or greater of the top cut decks this weekend, or will it be 7 or less? So 7.5 over under. Azul, why don't you start?
I'm gonna go with under on this one. Under on the 7.5. I think we'll hopefully see some more people pick up and do well with like Lost Box decks. Maybe
Yeah.
Muse. Yeah, I'm gonna go under.
Yeah, I'm going to take the under here as well. And I think that's because like we could see one of the regionals have like 5, but then the other one have just like 2, right? Like I think that's
Yeah.
totally something that could happen. So, and
Uh,
more likely it'll be like 3 and 3, but
yeah, probably. Well, we
3
could
and
see another
4,
sixer. Who knows? It could happen.
a sixer, a little sixer real quick.
Yeah. Next prediction we're gonna go with is uh the other. What does he think is gonna be the most popular deck that is not Lugia in top 8? What will have the next most top 8 placements? So go ahead, Chip. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's gotta be the Lost Box most likely. I
Makes
think I
sense.
mean, it's the second most played deck, right? And there's still a lot you can do with it. There's like, obviously you won with the deck, but there's still it doesn't feel like a super defined list. Like people can play
Mm-hmm.
it the way Pedro played it, people can play Kyogre, people can play Rayquaza. So there's still a lot of ways that people can go with it. And it feels like people are still trying to figure out what is best, though your list obviously seems very strong. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Lost Box for the second most top 8 placements.
Yeah, I was thinking about maybe saying Reggie's, but Europeans just don't. They either don't
They
play
never
Reggie's
they
enough,
don't play
they
Reggies.
don't play
Why
it,
do they hate it?
or they just don't do well with it. Maybe they maybe just don't know how to play it well. If you guys need to learn how to play Reggie's, let us Americans know. I'm sure someone here would hook you guys up with
I thought
some
you were about to
some
plug you
Reggie coaching.
I thought you were about to plug your coaching.
No. Yeah, but Europeans, I don't know if it is if you guys just don't like Reggie's or if you're just not very good with Reggie's. Not sure, but Reggie's doesn't do well in Europe, so that kind of takes away like half or one of the tournaments from Reggie's potentially doing well. I could see it doing pretty well in North America, of course, but if it's going to do pretty bad in Europe, you said Lost Box. I'll go with Mew on this one. I think Mew's still a pretty safe bet for a couple top 8s. Will it outperform Lost Box? Who knows? Maybe if Reggie shows up big enough in North America and Mew shows up good enough in Europe, will have the Mews overcome the Lost Boxes. So I'm gonna go with Mew being the most top 8 placements besides Lugia.
All right, highest placing Arceus Duraludon across both events, right? So
Yeah,
you only need to have one of them make a deep run if you predict it to, depending on where you put this placement.
are we gonna
Obviously,
pick
the deck
top
you love
X
to
or do you want us
hate.
to do we want to pick a specific number?
Ooh,
Like
interesting
top
choice.
8, top 16, top
Let's
32,
go
or
with
like I'm
yeah.
thinking
Let's
of
go
the
with
13th.
let's go with top X.
All right, I'm gonna go with I did say well, I'm gonna go with the top 16. Yeah, Arcturus, it's still Arctura, even though I picked it over the Gujar deck. And I did
Interesting.
kind of hype it up a little bit talking about it. Like things are looking it's looking better for it, but it's still like your glue game matchup's not that great. So and another thing you can always kind of, back up some of these thought processes with is like you're looking at the top 0.01% of players, or even top 1% of players. How many of them actually play Arctura besides Grant Shen? And it's not many, right? Not many, if any, in the current meta. So yeah, I'm gonna go with top 16 placement as the highest Arctura is gonna get this weekend.
I'm rolling up with the top 8, baby. I believe in the Arc Dura. Get in there, get that CP, the extra prize money. Arc Dura is gonna make it happen. Yeah, I mean, I think it's just the meta seems like it's gonna be just decent enough for it that in one of the two tournaments, someone's gonna make a deep run. That's what my call is. And maybe it'll be a top 4, but I'm gonna stay with top 8 right now.
That seems reasonable. And last prediction: does Control make top 8? I guess we don't know for sure if Sander is going to. Was it Bochum? Is that how you say it? Bochum?
Bochum.
Bochum. We don't know if Sanders for sure going to Bochum, so that could influence this pick a little bit. But what do you got, Chip? Do you think any controls will be able to pull out a top 8 placement?
Control on the
Two
docket for you
events.
guys.
What was that? Oh, for us? I mean, I always want to play control. I always want to play control. It's just like whether or not I think it's good enough. Control was like one of our top picks going into
I know.
OCIC, but tested a lot, like I said, against the Snorlax plus Birdkeeper, and it wasn't panning out how we'd want it to, so put it away. But like I did say, I don't think there's gonna be many Snorlaxes. There'll still be some Birdkeepers. So yeah, whenever I feel like Control's a good play, I definitely want to play it. That's for sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with no for this one, to be honest. I think there'll probably be just a little too much respect for it, though I expect most people won't have great answers. I think there'll be just a little too
Just
much
enough.
for it right now. Obviously, I think if I knew for certain Sander was going to Bochum, maybe I would change my answer.
That would change mine as well. But I'm gonna go with one. I'm gonna go with yeah. I think a Control will make top 8. I think there's a decent shot that Sander does go to Bochum, which of course increases the chance of Control making a top 8 by like probably like it probably doubles the chances, to be honest, at least.
Gives it a
Um,
solid amount of like 20% at least, right?
yeah, it has to give it quite a bit of a percentage boost for Control to make top 8 if Sander actually shows up to an event. So I'm gonna go with yes, one in top 8. Hopefully Sander does show up to Bochum and pulls it off. Um, but yeah, that's gonna do it for our predictions. Send us out, Chip.
It's going to do it for our predictions and for our podcast this week. Thanks so much to everyone for listening, sticking with us for this long episode. Really appreciate the support. And yeah, especially congratulations as well to Azul once again on winning his second IC. Proud of you, buddy. If you guys want to support the podcast, the best way to do it is to leave a rating or a review on your favorite podcasting platform, or drop a like and comment over on the YouTube video. These things only take a couple seconds and they really do help us out a bunch. If you want to follow along with us, the best way to do that is over on Twitter. You can follow myself at Chip Ritchie, Azul at Azul_GG, and you can follow the podcast at Uncommon_Energy.
Appreciate the support as always. We'll catch you all, or good luck to anyone going to a tournament this weekend, Knoxville or Bochum. And we'll catch you all next Tuesday at 7 a.m. Eastern. Peace.